Chapter 849. Sun Zhongming only had a good impression of Yi Xiao. From his point of view, this disciple of a small family was very much to his liking. It wouldn't be a bad idea to keep him by his side as a follower. But now, Yi Xiao actually said that he had a way to solve this matter. This was a little too arrogant. Sun Zhongming thought that Yi Xiao was eager to gain merit after joining him, which made Sun Zhongming somewhat unhappy. Hence, Sun Zhongming furrowed his brows. "You have a way?" Yi Xiao nodded. "Young master, those so-called vassal families aren't that close to the Lu clan. Some of them can be bribed with money." Sun Zhongming snorted coldly. "Do I need you to say that? I also know that some of them can be bribed with money, but such families are in the minority. Most of the families know which side they should stand on." Yi Xiao said solemnly, "They know, but the Lu clan might not trust them. Young master, you can only send people to those vassal families that you feel won't betray the Lu clan. Furthermore, you have to let the Lu clan see that we're there. However, we don't have to open our mouths to recruit them. They can just stay for a while and leave. As for those families that you can bribe with money, you can bribe them with money. This way, I can guarantee that the entire Lu clan will fall into chaos without us having to do anything." Sun Zhongming wasn't stupid. When Yi Xiao finished speaking, he immediately understood what the core of the plan was. There was only one word to describe it: suspicion. The Lu clan definitely wouldn't trust those vassal families completely, because it was the same for the Sun clan. After the Sun clan's people left, the Lu clan would go to the vassal families one by one to question them. At that time, those who didn't betray them would definitely say that the Sun clan's people came and said nothing. Those who received money and were prepared to betray them would also say the same thing. This way, the truth would be mixed with the lies, and the seeds of suspicion would be planted. The Sun clan wouldn't even need to make a move. They would fall into chaos on their own. The more Sun Zhongming thought about it, the more he felt that it was ingenious. He laughed and patted Yi Xiao's shoulder. "Not bad, not bad. I'll go tell father about this right now. Don't worry, you'll have a lot of credit." Yi Xiao shook his head and said, "No, young master, this is all thanks to you. You were the one who came up with all these plans. This subordinate is only doing the work." Sun Zhongming's face revealed a faint smile. He looked at Yi Xiao and said, "Are you going to give me the credit? Do you know that at this time, you've helped my Sun family with such a big favor? Even if you're not a member of the Sun family, the reward will still not be small." Yi Xiao's expression was solemn as he said, "Last time, this subordinate already said that the person this subordinate respects the most is young master. This subordinate knows that within the Sun clan, there are still some people who aren't convinced of young master's abilities. This battle with the Lu clan is a good opportunity for young master to stand out. This credit belongs to young master, which is much more useful than giving it to this subordinate. I'm not pressuring the entire Sun family, but you. As long as you can become the family head in the future, I believe that you won't mistreat me. Although this subordinate does not dare to say that I am far-sighted, at least I am not so short-sighted." The more Sun Zhongming looked at Yi Xiao, the more he liked him. As the heir of the Sun family on the surface, he actually had quite a number of subordinates. However, most of them could only be subordinates. They couldn't even do things properly, let alone give him advice and suggestions. And this Yi Xiao, other than being slightly weaker, was quick-witted and knew how to scheme. Where else could he find such subordinates? "Good. Yi Xiao, this young master will not let you down. Whatever you want, this young master will make it come true for you in the future." After encouraging Yi Xiao for a while, Sun Zhongming called for people to arrange Yi Xiao's accommodation and gave him a large pile of elixirs. Only then did he leave in satisfaction to report the situation to his father. In the Blood Soul bead, Chu Xiu shook his head. He had overestimated this Sun Zhongming. Although the other party's strength and talent were not bad, when it came to doing things, he had great ambitions but little talent. In the past, on the Longhu list, not to mention monstrous talents like Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian, even people like Xie Xiao Lu and Yan Fian had no opponents in their respective sections. They didn't have to worry about competing with others in their sections. But this Sun Zhongming actually didn't even manage his own affairs after so many years. He was simply trash. After Sun Zhongming reported the plan, it immediately received the attention of the current Sun family head, who was also Sun Zhongming's father, Sun Qifeng. At present, The Sun family and the Lu family had not directly fought each other. Both sides only had small-scale conflicts. However, the battle between the vassal family heads had already seen blood, and the Sun family was at a disadvantage. Now that Sun Zhongming presented such a plan, it could be said that it solved the Sun family's urgent situation. This immediately made the Sun family overjoyed, and they immediately acted according to Sun Zhongming's plan. As a result, in less than a month, the Lu family became suspicious of their vassal families. After repeated inspections and conflicts, their vassal families were divided. Many of them simply took the initiative to seek refuge with the Sun family, and the situation between the two sides was suddenly reversed. Moreover, after Chu Xiao came to the Sun family, he gave the Sun family many ideas, and all of them were strategies to destroy the family. To put it bluntly, in Chu Xiao's opinion, the Sun family of River East and the Lu family of Gao Ping were a bit too useless. It was not that their strength was useless, but that the Sun family of River East and the Lu family of Gao Ping had been living too comfortably these years. These two clans were in the middle of the 9 great clans. The Ying family of Shongshui stood at the peak, and their strength was so strong that they didn't even dare to think about it. The Dong family, the Luo family, and the other families were too weak to pose a threat to them. As a result, the Sun family and the Lu family had not formally fallen out with anyone for a long time. Therefore, in Chu Xiao's opinion, this method was a bit too gentle, and also a bit too inflexible. Therefore, after Chu Xiao came to the Sun family of River East, he told Yi Xiao many of the despicable methods of the Sun family, so that Sun Zhongming could tell the Sun family, and then use it against the Lu family. For example, cutting off the trade routes around the Lu family, so that some of the resources and materials that the Lu family needed would be greatly reduced. Otherwise, he would send people to provoke the forces that had a grudge against the Lu family, and have them cause trouble behind the Lu family. Chu Xiao even gave Sun Zhongming ideas, asking him to use force or enticement to gather more than half of the bandits in eastern Qi around the Lu family, causing the entire Gao Ping prefecture to be in a mess. In the vast Gao Ping prefecture, there were actually more than 10 forces that couldn't stand the fight between the two families, and had no choice but to move away. This indirectly caused the Lu family of Gao Ping prefecture to suffer losses. After all, these forces could be around the Gao Ping Lu family. Either the other party was a vassal family of the Gao Ping Lu family, or they also chose to surrender to the Gao Ping Lu family. Although these methods were not enough to hurt the Gao Ping Lu family, they caused constant trouble for the Gao Ping Lu family. Previously, when the Sun family and the Lu family fought, the Lu family actually had a slight advantage. After all, the Sun family had just lost 2 real pellet state martial artists. As a result, the offensive and defensive relationship between the two sides had changed. Although Chu Xiao asked Yi Xiao to give all these credits to Sun Zhongming was not an idiot. He would do something like the father and son of the Yi family. Sun Zhongming directly brought Yi Xiao with him all the time as his first confidant. He appreciated Yi Xiao very much, and he almost became sworn brothers with him. However, Chu Xiao was still a little dissatisfied. The Sun family and the Lu family were simply cowards. Since they came out of the illusionary realm 6, the two sides had been in direct conflict for more than half a year. In the end, they still didn't want to really fight, and there was no result. It was really too slow. Chu Xiao was now already thinking, do I need to add more fuel to the fire for both sides? At this moment, Sun Zhongming was preparing to take Chu Xiao to Nanliang city of eastern Qi. Sun Zhongming now regarded Yi Xiao as his confidant, so he had told him everything and asked him to help him consult. This time, Sun Zhongming went to Nanliang city to buy intelligence from the wind-sweeping building, to buy intelligence about the Lu family. Now that the two sides were at loggerheads, ordinary anemophilia would definitely not dare to sell the intelligence to the Sun family, so the Sun family could only go to the wind-sweeping building to buy it. As for why the Sun family did this, the reason was very simple. Now the Sun family was still struggling whether to fight or not. The Sun family had been used to keeping a low profile and forbearance over the years. It was impossible for them to act decisively. However, they kept having the feeling that things were going too smoothly, and the Sun family had inexplicably gained the upper hand. If it were any other aristocratic family, they would definitely take this opportunity to defeat their opponent in one go. However, the Sun family was different. After gaining the upper hand, they still felt a little uneasy. Hence, they wanted to obtain detailed information about the Lu family and analyze whether they should take action or not. After they arrived at Nanliang city, Sun Zhongming brought Yi Xiao along to the wind-sweeping building, but he never expected that he would be given the cold shoulder. The anemophilia from the wind-sweeping building were extremely sly. Even though they'd been paying attention to the battle between the Lu and Sun family at all times, they didn't intend to interfere. To the wind-sweeping building, all they had to do was be a witness, and they wouldn't take sides at such a critical moment. Even if the Sun family didn't intend to make a move against the Lu family immediately, and they only wanted to confirm the strength of both sides, it still wouldn't do. Sun Zhongming couldn't succeed no matter how he tried, and he could only return to the inn resentfully. He intended to think about if there was any other way. After nightfall, Yi Xiao sat cross-legged on the bed in the inn and continued cultivating. He knew that strength wasn't easy to come by, and even if he had a ready-made cultivation technique, he still couldn't avoid cultivating bitterly. After following Sun Zhongming, he didn't lack any medicinal pills, so he would cultivate bitterly whenever he had the time. Now, he had already advanced to the inner supreme realm, and it could be said to be godly speed. At this moment, the window of the inn seemed to have been eroded by the wind, and it mysteriously turned into powder. A woman wrapped in black had appeared outside the window, and the long saber in her hand flickered with a cold light. In the next moment, she was already before Yi Xiao. The difference in strength between the two parties was too great, and by the time Yi Xiao reacted, he could already feel the cold light on the edge of the saber. Just as various thoughts flashed through Yi Xiao's mind, and he was waiting for death unwillingly, Chu Xiu suddenly shouted in his mind, "Call out to Mu Zi!" Yi Xiao couldn't be bothered about anything else, and he subconsciously shouted, "Mu Zi!" The woman in black's body shook, and the saber that was already close to Yi Xiao's neck was retracted. Chapter 850. The blade was only a few centimeters away from Yi Xiao's neck. This was the first time he felt what death was like. At this time, the woman in black asked with a trembling voice, "Who are you? How do you know my name?" She had used this name a long time ago. Only a few people in the Blue Dragon Society knew about it. At least, this person in front of him definitely didn't know. Yi Xiao's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He didn't know what to say at this moment. This name was told by that mysterious senior, so how could he know what was going on? At this time, Chu Xiu's voice rang in Yi Xiao's ears. "Give her the blood soul bead." Yi Xiao immediately took out the blood soul bead and handed it to Mu Zi. Mu Zi hesitantly took it, and in the next moment, her mental force was pulled into the blood soul bead. Mu Zi vigilantly held the willow-curved eyebrow saber in front of her, but when she saw Chu Xiu inside, her eyes immediately turned red. "Young Master Chu, I knew it. You won't die, I knew it." Mu Zi's expression was emotional. Her expression seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. She couldn't even control her emotions. Chu Xiu didn't expect this girl to care about him so much. In fact, Chu Xiu didn't know that after learning of his death, Mu Zi really wanted to secretly poison Butian-nan to avenge him. She wasn't strong enough, so she could only do this little for Chu Xiu. To Chu Xiu, Mu Zi was just a girl he saved and enlightened when he was young. Even after that incident, Chu Xiu didn't care about Mu Zi's life or death. Although in the eyes of outsiders, Chu Xiu's behavior at that time could be said to be extremely cold, that was Chu Xiu's personality. "If I find you pleasing to the eye, I can spend some time to enlighten you, but if you really want to die, I won't bother." However, to Mu Zi, Chu Xiu's position was completely different. He was the person who gave her a second life. When the Mu family was exterminated, the only thing that kept Mu Zi alive was revenge. Later on, Chu Xiu helped her take revenge and said a few words when she was about to die, allowing her to let go of death and obtain a new life. Chu Xiu's position in her heart was indescribable. It could even be said that Chu Xiu's position was even more important than her adoptive father, the Blue Dragon Society's second dragon head, Duanmu Qianshan, who took care of her and guided her to where she was now. Lu Jianghe stood at the side with a gloomy expression. This girl treated him like he was invisible from the moment she came in. Lu Jianghe couldn't help but say, "I say, Chu Xiu brat, you really have a lot of luck with women. That girl from the Yin Demon sect and that girl from the Luo family. Tell me in detail, how many women do you have that I don't know?" "Shut up." Chu Xiu rebuked Lu Jianghe, then turned his head and said, "Although I'm not dead, I'm not much better now. As you can see, I can only stay here temporarily in the blood soul bead and rely on that brat outside to move around." Mu Zi immediately said, "It's all right, young Master Chu. I will immediately take the blood soul bead to my adoptive father. No matter what price I have to pay, I will help you reconstruct your body. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "No need, I naturally have a way to reconstruct my body. But why are you here? I remember that you were exiled to the northern Yen side by Bu Tiannan, right? Also, why did you kill Yi Xiao?" The last time Chu Xiu saw Mu Zi was exiled to the northern Yen side from the Blue Dragon Society because of the conflict between his adoptive father, Duanmu Qianshan. Why did she come back now? Mu Zi smiled bitterly and said, "It's a bit complicated, and it's related to you, young Master Chu." "Related to me?" Mu Zi nodded and said, "When my adoptive father found out that young Master Chu was in trouble, Bu Tiannan hit you when you were down. He quarreled with Bu Tiannan and thought that it was stupid to make enemies with the Yinma clan because of a moment of anger and personal grudges. But not only did Bu Tiannan not listen to him, he even angrily said that my adoptive father had no right to control his actions. In addition, that despicable Duan Tianlang added fuel to the fire, so my adoptive father was directly stripped of his power by the Great Dragon Head and sent to the Blue Dragon Society headquarters to reflect on his actions. When my adoptive father was in trouble, I wanted to come back to take a look. Maybe Bu Tiannan thought that I, a woman, couldn't cause any trouble, so he called me back to Eastern Qi. As for killing Yi Xiao, I accepted the task. After all, I am still in the Blue Dragon Society, and I can't refuse all the tasks given to me by my superiors." Chu Xiu nodded in understanding and asked, "Do you know who asked you to kill Yi Xiao?" "It's Lu Guangling from the Lu clan of Gao Ping. Recently, the Lu clan of Gao Ping has suffered quite a bit, so they wanted to ask the Blue Dragon Society to kill some people from the Sun clan to regain some face. It seems that the Lu clan doesn't want to completely fall out with the Sun clan, so the Lu clan's targets are those who aren't directly related to the Sun clan. This Yi Xiao is Sun Zhongming's trusted aide, and it seems that he's very valued, so he naturally became the target." The Blue Dragon Society indeed had a rule that they couldn't reveal the employer's information. But for the current Mu Zi, at least in front of Chu Xiu, this rule was as good as non-existent. After pondering for a while, Chu Xiu asked Mu Zi, "So Lu Guangling is also in Nanliang City now?" Mu Zi nodded and said, "He said he wanted to see the scene when Sun Zhongming's trusted aide was killed, so he specially came to Nanliang City." Chu Xiu pondered and said, "How about this, you can't kill Yi Xiao. He's still very useful to me. You can just ignore the Lu clan for now. I want to ask you a question now. You know about the grudge between me and Bu Tiannan. What's your adoptive father, Duanmu Qianshan's attitude?" In the future, Chu Xiu wanted to find those who hit him when he was down to settle the score, but the Blue Dragon Society wasn't so easy to deal with. Not to mention Bu Tiannan, as the strongest of the four spirits, the assassins of the Blue Dragon Society were all over the world for many years. With all 36 branches gathered, their might was extremely shocking. Therefore, Chu Xiu really wanted to know what the Blue Dragon Society's attitude towards Bu Tiannan was. Mu Zi said in a deep voice, "Adoptive father has always been loyal to the Blue Dragon Society, not to Bu Tiannan alone. Adoptive father even had the chance to fight for the position of the chief dragon, but he gave it up because Bu Tiannan was more talented in martial arts. But now, adoptive father regrets it, not because he didn't get the position of the chief dragon, but because he trusted the wrong person. If Bu Tiannan continues to act so crazily, sooner or later, the entire Blue Dragon Society will be dragged into the pit." Mu Zi could vaguely guess what Chu Xiu meant, so she didn't wait for Chu Xiu to continue asking and directly said, "Young Master Chu, if you want to kill Bu Tiannan, not only will adoptive father not stop you, he will even join hands with you. Bu Tiannan's existence has already endangered the future of the entire Blue Dragon Society. As long as you don't vent your anger on the Blue Dragon Society and only kill Bu Tiannan, adoptive father won't have any objections." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh? Join hands? Isn't your adoptive father already imprisoned by Bu Tiannan? How can we join hands?" Mu Zi said, "After all, adoptive father is the second dragon head of the Blue Dragon Society. He has been in the Blue Dragon Society longer than Bu Tiannan, and all the big and small matters are handled by adoptive father. Therefore, after so many years, adoptive father's prestige is higher than Bu Tiannan's. Right now, adoptive father is imprisoned by Bu Tiannan without any resistance, but he is only not allowed to leave the Blue Dragon Society. He can still see other people. In the entire Blue Dragon Society, Half of the blue dragon heads are on adoptive father's side. Among the 36 Big Dipper divisions, adoptive father can completely control half of them. Among the remaining half, only a few are completely loyal to Butian-nan. The attitude of the rest is unclear. After hearing this, Chu Xiu also shook his head slightly. He didn't expect that Duanmu Qianshan, the second dragon head, would have such great power. To be honest, if he was Butian-nan, he definitely wouldn't tolerate such a subordinate around. However, the difference was that if the other party didn't show any signs of rebellion, Chu Xiu would only think of ways to make himself stronger. On the other hand, Butian-nan would only violently seize power or even kill people. In this way, it was very likely that the other party would retaliate. Chu Xiu thought for a moment and said, "Go back to the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society first and ask your adoptive father if he is willing to join hands with me. Give me accurate information. Of course, you need to hide my current situation for the time being." Mu Zi didn't even think before directly agreeing, being incomparably straightforward. After saying that, Chu Xiu was afraid that the other Sun family members would hear the commotion, so he asked Mu Zi to leave for the time being. However, before leaving, Mu Zi also gave Chu Xiu a password and a token. It allowed him to command the Assassin's branch of the Blue Dragon Society that was around the Sun family. At present, the people in charge of the Assassin's branch were Duanmu Qianshan's trusted subordinates, Han Kuai and Song Xiao. These two were one of the 4 great assassins of the Blue Dragon Society and were absolutely reliable people. If Chu Xiu needed them, he could use these 2 items to command the Assassin's branch at any time. After leaving these things behind, Mu Zi returned the Blood Soul Pearl to Yi Xiao and left directly. Yi Xiao was actually quite curious. This senior of his seemed to know quite a lot of people in the pugilistic world, and they were all women? He didn't dare to think too much. Just now, Mu Zi's blade really made him feel like he was about to die. That kind of feeling was something that he didn't want to experience in his life. This also made him realize that his cultivation was still too far away. In the Blood Soul Pearl, Lu Jiang he looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised expression and said, "You trust that little girl so much? What if she lied to you and turned around to tell Butian-nan about your situation? Aren't you afraid that Butian-nan would come over right now and drag you out of the Blood Soul Pearl?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I trust her, but I trust myself even more. When she tells these things to Duanmu Qianshan and comes back to pass the message, I reckon that my body would have already been successfully reconstructed. At that time, even if I have to face Butian-nan, I would still dare to fight him." Lu Jiang he looked at Chu Xiu with a surprised expression. He didn't know what Chu Xiu was planning to do. This kid seemed to be preparing to play a big game. However, after the body was reconstructed, Chu Xiu could at most recover to his peak. If his weapon was broken, where would he get the courage to face Butian-nan? Chapter 851. When Mu Zi came at night, her movements were very light, and her presence was concealed to the extreme. In addition, during this period of time, Mu Zi had already stepped into the unity of heaven and man realm. With the strength of Sun Zhongming and the others, they did not discover her. It was only after dawn that Sun Zhongming and the others checked out and left that the innkeeper discovered that one of the windows in the guest room was gone. However, the shopkeeper did not dare to say too much. After all, that person was from the Sun family of River East, and he was generous enough. The money he gave was enough to repair 100 windows. Sun Zhongming was unwilling to give up, so he went to the wind-sweeping tower to try again, but he still did not succeed. Yi Xiao, who was at the side, said, "Young master, wind-sweeping pavilion's attitude is too stubborn. I'm afraid that they won't be able to resolve this issue in a short time. Why don't we find a place to eat and rest for a while before we come up with a plan?" Even though wind-sweeping tower was the best in the field of anemophilia, it did not mean that there were no other anemophilia forces in the game. "I heard Southbridge City's Cool Breeze Drunken Moon Inn isn't bad. Why don't we go there and have a try?" During this period of time, Sun Zhongming relied on Yi Zhao's suggestions to successfully stabilize his position in the Sun family. The other disciples of the Sun family didn't even have the qualifications to compete with him. Even in the entire Sun family, because Sun Zhongming's suggestions had been successful time and time again, the weight of his words had almost caught up to his father, Sun Qifeng. Of course, the real decision-makers were the Sun family's patriarch and Sun Qifeng. Just like how the Sun family's patriarch and Sun Qifeng valued Sun Zhongming also valued Yi Zhao's suggestion. Hearing Yi Zhao's words, he nodded and said, "All right, let's go eat first." At this time, in the private room of the Breeze Drunken Moon restaurant, Lu Guangling of the Lu family glared at his subordinate in anger. "What did you say? Those guys from the Blue Dragon Society are stalling again? What kind of bullshit T-1 assassin organization is this? Why are they so slow in killing someone? I can send my own men to kill him." The subordinate lowered his head and said, "The people of the Blue Dragon Society said that killing is their business, and we don't need to interfere. It's our fault for not telling them the time beforehand, so they will only make a move when they have absolute confidence." Lu Guangling was so angry that he smashed his cup. However, he didn't dare to go to the Blue Dragon Society to demand an explanation. There were so many major powers in the underworld, but only a handful could afford to offend the Blue Dragon Society. Lu Guangling clearly didn't have the guts to do so. At that moment, Lu Guangling heard someone coming up the stairs. The voice was extremely familiar. He pushed the door open and saw Sun Zhongming coming up the stairs. Sun Zhongming was shocked to see Lu Guangling. "Why are you here?" Lu Guangling laughed coldly. "If you're here, why can't I be here? Can the forces of your River East Sun clan extend to Southbridge City?" Sun Zhongming snorted coldly. "Lu Guangling, you won't be able to be arrogant for much longer. Under the attacks of my Sun clan, your Lu clan has been retreating step by step. If you don't admit defeat now, you'll regret it if we really fight." Lu Guangling's face darkened at the mention of this. Firstly, it was because the Lu family was indeed at a disadvantage. Secondly, it was because Sun Zhongming was in the limelight. Now, everyone knew that the Sun clan's sinister ideas came from Sun Zhongming. It didn't matter if they were sinister or not, as long as they were effective. Therefore, all the aristocratic families looked up to Sun Zhongming, and Lu Guangling was naturally inferior. However, a smile appeared on Lu Guangling's face at this moment. "Whether you regret it or not, we'll talk about it later. But I think you'll regret it now. Don't you have a lover in Great Liang City's Heavenly Fragrance brothel? But prostitutes are heartless, and entertainers are heartless. Of course they'll follow whoever has the money. Your young master son has been scheming against my Lu clan recently, so he definitely doesn't have the time to take care of a woman. Don't worry, I'll help you take care of her. I've already bought that woman to the Lu clan, and she's been serving me on my bed for many days now. You don't say, she's not bad at all." Sun Zhongming immediately exploded when he heard this. Although she was the top hostess of Heavenly Fragrance brothel, she was just a prostitute. How could he, young master son, fall in love with her? He was just playing around. But Lu Guangling's words made Sun Zhongming feel as if grass had grown on his head. This was an absolute humiliation. No man could tolerate something like this. Sun Zhongming immediately made a move. At this moment, Yi Xiao hurriedly pulled on Sun Zhongming and said, Young master, please calm down." Although Yi Xiao was pulling on Sun Zhongming on the surface, in reality, he had secretly cut open a wound on his chest. Fresh blood continuously flowed into the blood soul pearl. At the same time, an extreme wave of mental energy also surged out of the blood soul pearl and entered Sun Zhongming's body through Yi Xiao. In an instant, his anger was triggered to the extreme. With a furious roar, Sun Zhongming's entire body exploded with astral energy. He directly sent Yi Xiao flying, and he charged crazily at Lu Guangling. Yi Xiao's face was pale as he shouted at the other Sun Clan martial artists, "Why didn't you guys stop him just now?" They thought that Yi Xiao's pale face was because he had been injured while pulling on Sun Zhongming, so they didn't suspect anything. They only said in an aggrieved tone, "Who would have thought that the young master would be serious? If he wanted to make a move, how could we dare to stop him?" Just as they were speaking, Sun Zhongming had already started fighting with Lu Guangling. The moment they actually started fighting, Lu Guangling's expression instantly changed. Sun Zhongming was fighting with his life on the line. Originally, he thought that Sun Zhongming was just angry. Now, it seemed like he would not stop until he killed him. That woman was just a prostitute. Could it be that Sun Zhongming had really fallen in love with her? If that was the case, it would be the hatred of stealing his wife. It was no wonder he was so crazy now. The two of them fought intensely in the building, almost causing the Breeze Drunken Moon Inn to collapse. One of them was ranked 10th on the Longhu leaderboard, while the other was ranked 9th. In reality, the two of them were about the same level of strength. However, when they really started fighting, Lu Guangling's hands and feet were tied and he was at a disadvantage. Being suppressed by Sun Zhongming like this, Lu Guangling was also infuriated. The two spears in his hands pierced towards Sun Zhongming with unparalleled momentum. However, at this moment, Sun Zhongming did something that no one could have imagined. He actually used the strength of his hands to receive Lu Guangling's long spear. Even though the bones in his arms were shattered by the long spear and stellar energy, he did not let go. At the same time, blood gushed out of his mouth. However, under the support of the frost true qi, it condensed into a blood-colored icicle arrow. It shot towards Lu Guangling's chest, directly shattering his protective true qi and piercing into his chest. Lu Guangling's eyes revealed a look of disbelief. He did not believe that Sun Zhongming would actually kill him. He actually dared to kill him. With a loud bang, the corpse fell to the ground. Sun Zhongming dragged his temporarily crippled hands. His eyes finally regained clarity, but there was a look of confusion in them. He actually killed Lu Guangling. In that instant, Sun Zhongming was incomparably furious. That rage was simply uncontrollable. In the end, who would have thought that he would actually kill Lu Guangling? How was he going to explain this to the Lu clan? Their Sun clan was not ready to fight the Lu clan yet. At this time, Yi Xiao led the other martial artists over and commanded, "Stop the other Lu clan members. Do not let a single one of them escape." Hearing Yi Xiao's words, Sun Zhongming finally reacted and hurriedly ordered the others to kill the Lu clan members. However, he still put on a long face and said, "What should I do now? Why is Lu Guangling so weak? He's dead just like that." The elder patriarch is not ready to fight the Lu clan yet. This time, we've really gotten ourselves into big trouble. Yi Xiao said in a low voice, "Young master, don't worry. Our Sun clan is not prepared, and neither is the Lu clan. When you return to the Sun clan, young master, immediately encourage the elder patriarch to fight the Lu clan to the death. Only then can the clan reduce or even not pursue your responsibility." Sun Zhongming thought for a moment and immediately nodded fiercely. At this point, this was the only thing they could do. However, when Sun Zhongming and the others returned to the Sun clan, everything that happened in the restaurant today had already spread throughout the entire Eastern Qi pugilistic world. The heir of the Sun clan of River East, Sun Zhongming, had killed Lu Guangling of the Lu clan in a rage for the sake of a beauty. This was big news, and it was the gossip that the pugilistic world loved to hear the most. It had only been a few days, and there were already countless melodramatic versions of the story. The top prostitute of the heavenly fragrance brothel was even described as a goddess who had descended to the mortal world. When Sun Zhongming and the others returned to the Sun clan, they were immediately called over by the elder patriarch of the Sun clan, Sun Zuchong, Sun Qifeng, and other senior members of the Sun clan to question them. Sun Zuchong looked at Sun Zhongming and said coldly, "What exactly happened? The clan has not prepared to fight the Lu clan yet, and you killed him. This time, even if we don't want to fight, we have no choice." Hearing this, Sun Zhongming immediately knelt on the ground and said with his head lowered, "Elder Patriarch, I was rash in this matter. That Lu Guangling was too much of a bully, and I couldn't hold back and killed him. I originally thought that he was one rank higher than me on the Longhu leaderboard, but I didn't expect him to be so useless. Of course, no matter what, this is all my fault, and I am willing to bear all the responsibility. But now, our Sun clan cannot delay any longer, and we have to attack the Lu clan immediately. Our Sun clan is not prepared, and the Lu clan is not prepared either. As the saying goes, the one who strikes first gains the upper hand. It's a good opportunity to destroy the Lu clan in one go." Sun Zhongming's speech was taught to him by Chu Xiao. Otherwise, with Sun Zhongming's character, he would definitely quibble over and over again, which would only arouse Sun Zuchong's disgust. Indeed, after hearing Sun Zhongming's words, Sun Zuchong's anger was greatly reduced. Moreover, it was better for the Sun clan's disciples to kill someone than to be killed. This also proved that the Sun clan's disciples were indeed stronger than the Lu clan's. Therefore, Sun Zuchong could only sigh and said, "Since it has already happened, what's the use of punishing you? When the war with the Lu clan starts, as a disciple of my Sun clan, you will be able to fight bravely to atone for your crimes." Hearing Sun Zuchong say this, Sun Zhongming was instantly overjoyed. At the same time, he also heaved a sigh of relief, knowing that he had passed the test. Disciple will definitely not let Elder Patriarch down. Chapter 852. Many people knew that there would be a battle between the Sun family and the Lu family. No one would have thought that the Sun family and the Lu family would have a life-and-death battle because of a woman. Moreover, the party that took the initiative to attack was the Sun family of River East, who had always been cautious and patient. Sun Zuchong adopted Sun Zhongming's suggestion and prepared to strike first. Although the Sun family had been patient, they were not idiots. Since they couldn't avoid this battle, why do they have to fight on the Sun family's territory? In the end, it would be the Sun family's property that would be damaged, so it was better to strike first. As Sun Zhongming's confidant, Yi Xiao naturally followed the Sun family to attack. In the Blood Soul Bead, Lu Jiang he muttered, "I don't want to say this, but the descendants of the Sun family's old tortoise are also not very good. Compared to their ancestors, they are also very useless. Even if you have given them so many ideas, I still think that the Sun family's chance of winning is not big." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "It doesn't matter whether it's big or not. Do you think I want to drive the tiger to swallow the wolf? You're wrong." Back in the illusory Six Realms, there was also the Lu family's old ancestor who added insult to injury. So this time both of them must die. Lu Jianghe's heart moved, but he didn't continue to say anything. He had seen Chu Xiu's plan along the way, and even he felt sorry for the Sun family. First, they got close to Sun Zhongming through Yi Xiao, and then through Sun Zhongming, they got in touch with the entire Sun family's upper echelons. Chu Xiu didn't even show his face, but the Sun family had been following Chu Xiu's script. In the end, they wouldn't even know how they died. The Lu family naturally noticed that the Sun family had come with such a big lineup, but there was nothing they could do. The Lu family couldn't be blamed for their slow reaction, but they really didn't expect that the Sun family, who had always been patient and cautious, would dare to kill their heir and openly provoke them. Even the others didn't expect the Sun family to do this. It was as if there was an invisible hand controlling everything, but the problem was that Sun Zuchong was in existence in the true fire spirit refinement realm. Who could affect him? The others didn't understand, and naturally, the Lu family didn't understand either. Therefore, the Lu family was still researching, wondering why the Sun family would take the initiative to provoke them and whether there was a conspiracy. But before they could come to a conclusion, the Sun family had already come knocking on their door. In front of Gao Ping's Lu clan's mansion, the light of formation Dao shone brightly. Although the Lu family was caught off guard, they were not completely defenseless. The ancestor of the Lu clan held a dark blue spear that emitted a gloomy, cold aura. He looked at Sun Zuchong and said coldly, "I've miscalculated this time. I didn't expect your Sun clan to be so ruthless just for a cultivation technique. If I had known this earlier, my Lu clan would have gone all out from the beginning and not given the Sun clan any chance." The ancestor of the Sun clan snorted and said, "Even if your Lu clan had gone all out from the beginning, you still wouldn't have had a chance." Although Sun Zuchong sounded tough, he was actually very bitter in his heart because he didn't want to fight this battle at all. If Chu Xiu hadn't secretly let the Sun clan gain the upper hand, and if Sun Zhongming hadn't killed Lu Guangling, the two sides would have become enemies. Then the result of this matter would have been that both sides would have taken a step back. The Sun clan would have taken out enough conditions to exchange for the Lu clan's half of the cultivation technique, or the Lu clan would have taken out conditions to exchange for the Sun clan's half of the cultivation technique. But now, Lu Guangling had been killed, and there was no turning back. Although this battle was a little strange, they could only fight to the end. Sun Zuchong said in a deep voice, "Old man Lu, I'll give you one last chance on account of the fact that our families were once in-laws. Hand over the other half of the cultivation technique, and I can spare your Lu family this once." The ancestor of the Lu clan sneered and said, "All right, my grandson died in the hands of your Sun clan. Take Sun Zhongming's life as compensation, and I'll give you the other half of the cultivation technique." Sun Zuchong sighed, but in the next moment, he took a step forward. Icy chi shone around him, and he pointed out with his finger. The chi of heaven and earth began to condense in mid-air, turning into a long icicle sword that was dozens of feet long, and it attacked the ancestor of the Lu clan with terrifying power. The ancestor of the Lu clan also snorted coldly. The long spear in his hand was like a bolt of lightning, directly attracting the power of the 9 heavens. Every time the spear landed, there would be a thunderous explosion. Seeing that the two ancestors had already started fighting, The rest of the disciples of the Sun clan and Lu clan also began to attack under the command of their respective elders. The formation around the Lu clan and Sun clan shone brightly. Not only had the Lu clan prepared a formation, but even the Sun clan had prepared some auxiliary formations to facilitate the attack. Among the 9 great families, although the strength of the Sun clan and the Lu clan was not the strongest, they were definitely not weak. At present, the two sides were engaged in a battle of annihilation. Tens of thousands of warriors were involved in the battle, and the power was simply terrifying. Although it could not be compared to the battle between the righteous and demonic paths in the moon-worshipping cult, it was still intense enough. Such an intense battle was naturally observed by the side by wind-sweeping tower. However, the battle before them was too intense. Moreover, both sides' matrices overlapped. The layers of matrices shone brightly, not only blocking everyone's vision, but also their perception. This made the people from Wind-Sweeping Tower feel a little depressed. Qi Yuanli led a group of people from Wind-Sweeping Tower to observe the situation halfway up the mountain. Seeing this, he directly took out a recliner from the secret space box and lay there comfortably, waiting for the fierce battle to end. Seeing Qi Yuanli's expression, the surrounding warriors from Wind-Sweeping Tower were slightly speechless. This was a fierce battle between 2 of the 9 great families. Deputy Tower Master, can you be more serious? In fact, Qi Yuanli was quite serious at this moment because he had been thinking about why the battle between these 2 families was so inexplicable. Wind-Sweeping Tower's analysis of intelligence could be said to be quite accurate. Previously, according to their predictions, these 2 forces would definitely not fight each other. But now, both sides were really fighting, and it seemed like they would not stop until one side was dead. Strange, really strange. At this time, inside the formation, the people of the Sun clan and the Lu clan had already begun to fight. Sun Zhongming, Yi Xiao, and a few other followers stood in the corner and did not make a move. Although Sun Zuchong had previously said that he wanted Sun Zhongming to fight bravely and redeem himself, in fact, he was after all the most outstanding disciple of this generation of the Sun clan of River East. If he was killed in this kind of chaotic battle, there would really be no one to blame. Therefore, Sun Zhongming only led his people to watch the battle in the corner and did not directly participate in the battle. However, at this time, no one noticed that Yi Xiao had placed the blood soul bead on the ground. Suddenly, a strange blood-red color bloomed from the blood soul bead and extended to the ground. In a martial arts battlefield with tens of thousands of people, there were people dying every moment. The pungent smell of blood filled the entire space, but at this time, lines of blood rose from the ground and continuously extracted the blood and qi of the corpses. These lines of blood were extremely thin, and in addition to the fact that everyone was fighting fiercely with blood flowing on the ground, no one noticed this strange situation. Inside the blood soul bead, Lu Jiang he looked at Chu Xiu, who was using the demonic blood technique to extract the blood and qi of the corpses. He finally knew how big Chu Xiu was going this time. Based on Lu Jianghe's character in the past, his physical body had been destroyed many times. However, the so-called body reconstruction was only to create the weakest body, which might not even reach the innate realm. Then he would continue to kill people and extract blood, step by step, to return to the peak. Generally speaking, as long as one cultivated the demonic blood technique, there was only one way. Otherwise, where could one find a battlefield where tens of thousands of people were fighting fiercely and the strength of the cultivators could not be weak, so that one could take advantage of them? The probability of this happening was almost zero, but now, Chu Xiu had forcibly created such a battlefield, which was simply shocking. This was the blood of tens of thousands of people, and the strength of the cultivators was not weak, ranging from blood condensation innate realm to martial Dao grandmasters. With so much blood, not only could Chu Xiu rebuild his body to the peak, it was even possible for him to reach the next level. The blood-red light on the blood soul bead had condensed to the extreme, and at this moment, a dark light appeared. This light condensed and turned into a pill covered with demon crests. It was Chu Xiu's indestructible demon core. But the strangest thing was that below the indestructible demon core, a stone-like object also condensed, with strange patterns on its surface. Chu Xiu was taken aback. Wasn't this the so-called Heaven Ascension Key that High Heaven sect had mentioned? How could it be in his possession and even integrate into his body? Could it be that when the spirit array shattered, this thing merged with his indestructible demon core? Chu Xiu didn't have time to think so much. The countless blood-red threads on the ground poured into the indestructible demon core, and the scarlet light became even brighter. Such a big movement, even a blind man could see it. Sun Zhongming and the others were suddenly shocked. They turned their heads and looked at the evil thing wrapped in a mass of blood-red threads in amazement. At this time, Yi Xiao was standing next to the mass of blood-red threads, and although there was surprise in his eyes, he still remained calm. Sun Zhongming looked at Yi Xiao in amazement and asked, "What is this thing?" Yi Xiao didn't speak and just stared at the mass of blood-red threads. To be honest, he was also very curious about who this mysterious senior was. Inside the blood soul bead space, the face of the senior was always covered with a layer of blood mist, making it impossible to see his face clearly. Now, he finally knew the identity of this senior. For people like Sun Zhongming, Yi Xiao had long since had enough patience. At this moment, the outcome was already decided, so of course he didn't bother to play along. Seeing that Yi Xiao didn't answer him, Sun Zhongming couldn't help feeling that something was wrong. Before he could say anything, the mass of blood-red threads twisted and finally turned into a person, composed entirely of blood. Although this person's whole body was composed of blood, it was vivid and lifelike, and his eyebrows and eyes were clearly visible. Chu Xiu stretched his head and looked at Sun Zhongming. "What did you say before?" "I, Chu Xiu, am dead, so dead that not even my dregs remain, so you dare to touch my people?" Chapter 853. Sun Zhongming stared at Chu Xiu, who was made of fresh blood, as though he had seen a ghost. In fact, he had indeed seen a ghost. A guy who had been blasted into smithereens in front of everyone had actually appeared before him in such a strange form. If this wasn't a ghost, what else could it be? A dead person would always be more terrifying than a living person. At least, this was the case for Sun Zhongming. Previously, Sun Zhongming had not dared to provoke Chu Xiu. But now, as he looked at Chu Xiu, an extreme sense of fear rose in his heart. Sun Zhongming trembled. Just as he was about to say something, he realized that his body was being sucked towards Chu Xiu uncontrollably. Before he could say a word, he realized that all the blood in his body was boiling and flowing towards Chu Xiu's body. In an instant, Sun Zhongming's entire body had been sucked dry and turned into a dried corpse. The other martial artists who followed Sun Zhongming wanted to escape, but with a wave of Chu Xiu's hand, all their blood was sucked dry and their bodies fell to the ground. Yi Xiao looked at Chu Xiu in front of him and was also so shocked that he could not speak. Although this generation's Longhu leaderboard had almost all been replaced with new people, there were many monsters in the previous generation's Longhu leaderboard. How could someone like Chu Xiu not be recognized? This was especially so for Yi Xiao. Because he was often bullied, the person he respected the most in the previous generation's Longhu leaderboard was not the famous little celestial master, nor was it Zhong Xian, who came from a large sect. Instead, it was Chu Xiu, who came from a lowly devil Dao and was ruthless and decisive. He had never expected that a person who only existed in legends would appear before him in such a way and even teach him martial arts. Yi Xiao was so emotional that he did not know what to say. Chu Xiu pointed behind him and said, "Kid, hide further away later. It won't be fun if you get hurt by accident." Before Yi Xiao could react, Chu Xiu waved his hand and sent Yi Xiao hundreds of meters away. Looking at the scene in front of him, Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. In an instant, the blood-red glow around him intensified, and countless bloodlines entered his body in a frenzy. Chu Xiu and the others were only at a corner of the battlefield, so Chu Xiu's movements did not attract much attention. However, at this moment, a layer of flames ignited around Chu Xiu. The flames were like gold and silver, causing the qi and blood around Chu Xiu to boil. Chu Xiu's current body was completely made up of fresh blood. Once the layer of flames burned, it caused Chu Xiu's body to shrink rapidly. However, even more blood threads rapidly surged into Chu Xiu's body, replenishing the qi and blood he had consumed. Seeing this, Lu Jianghe was shocked. F***CK. Inner Force True Fire? What are you going to do, kid? The body condensed from fresh blood was also a part of Chu Xiu. At this moment, Chu Xiu felt as if he was in an alchemy furnace. There was an extreme burning pain around him, causing his nerves to be stretched to the extreme. I've said it before. I've wasted more than half a year. Of course, I can't just let it go like this. After the body is reconstructed, I don't want to just return to my previous appearance. I want to improve further. Chu Xiu's words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps between his teeth. However, at this moment, the power around his body became more and more solid, gradually revealing his physical body. However, within his physical body, there was also a gold and silver inner force true fire burning. It was like forging weapons and forging swords, tempering his body to become even more perfect. True fire body refinement. Lu Jiang he immediately thought of the junior named Chen Qingdi in the past. The path he had taken could be said to be shocking. Now, Chu Xiu was walking the same path as Emperor Chen Qingdi. However, to be more precise, he was gathering all the paths together. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to reconstruct a body that could be said to be perfect. Using the eternal demon pill as a guide, he could preserve his own origin and at the same time refine all kinds of power. Then, he would use the demonic blood power to absorb endless blood and qi, refining it into the purest power to reconstruct his physical body. In the end, Chu Xiu even used the inner force true fire to temper his body, just like Chen Qingdi. Because Chu Xiu was reconstructing his body this time, the path that Chen Qingdi had walked for more than 10 years, Chu Xiu could directly go from weak to strong, completing it in one step. No wonder Chu Xiu said that he was going to play it big this time. According to Chu Xiu's plan, he might be able to walk a path that no one had ever walked before and no one would be able to walk after. His body had been tempered to a perfect level by the inner force true fire, but he had yet to experience the true fire spirit refinement realm. Therefore, Chu Xiu's future path was even wider than Chen Qingdi's. Amidst the true fire of internal strength, Chu Xiu was constantly experiencing the torment of being roasted by fire. However, he had to endure it at all times, mobilizing the power of the true fire of internal strength to temper every meridian in his body. After planning for such a long time, provoking 2 of the 9 superclans into a life-and-death battle, using the blood and qi of tens of thousands of people to reconstruct his body, even if Chu Xiu was given another chance, he might not succeed. Therefore, during this period of time, Chu Xiu could not tolerate the slightest mistake. Previously, Chu Xiu already knew that Chen Qingdi had tempered his body with the inner force true fire, so he naturally knew how great the pain was. However, he did not expect that the pain could be so intense. Chu Xiu only needed to endure this moment to be considered a success, but Chen Qingdi had to endure this pain for more than 10 years to finally reach his current realm. It had to be said that in terms of sheer willpower, there was probably no one in the entire Jianghu who could compare to Chen Qingdi. The body that was filled with extreme power was born in the inner force true fire. At the same time, the invincible demon core was circulating wildly in Chu Xiu's body, transforming his qi and blood into extremely pure qi. From the innate stage to the inner invulnerability and outer invulnerability, from the 3 flowers at once prominence to the unity of heaven and man. In the end, the invincible demon core blossomed with a dazzling brilliance, directly penetrating the body and merging with the inner force true fire that interweaved with gold and silver all over Chu Xiu's body, turning it into a demonic power that soared into the sky. With a wave of his hand, a black robe had already covered Chu Xiu's body. At this moment, he could be considered to have truly reshaped his body. To be precise, this was not reshaping, but rather Chu Xiu had created a more perfect body for himself. Although there was no glazed golden silk goo, Chu Xiu's current body could be said to be perfect and flawless. It could even be said to have the appearance of a celestial being. Even if Chu Xiu crippled his own martial arts, if he were to cultivate back, his cultivation speed would still be tremendous. Previously, when Chu Xiu did not cause such a huge commotion, the surrounding people did not notice him. After all, at that time, both sides were engaged in a life-and-death battle. Who would divert their attention to observe other places? But now, the scene of demonic qi soaring into the sky attracted everyone's attention. In an instant, Chu Xiu had already become the focus of everyone present. Raising his head, Chu Xiu took a step forward. Ink-like demonic qi lingered around his body as he brought Chu Xiu a distance of 100 feet with each step. Looking at Sun Zuchang and Lu Clan's ancestor, the corners of Chu Xiu's lips curled into a smile. Both of you, how have you been? I'm here today to collect my debt, to collect my life debt. Sun Zuchang and the Lu family's patriarch looked as though they had seen a ghost. They could not believe that Chu Xiu was still alive. Jingchan Jizong was already dead on that occasion, and not even his dregs were left. Yet, Chu Xiu was still alive. Sun Zuchang and Lu Clan's ancestor were not ignorant and ill-informed Sun Zhongming. They had naturally heard of some secret techniques circulating in the pugilistic world that could allow people to revive after death, but the conditions were extremely harsh. They never expected Chu Xiao to know such a secret technique.
Furthermore, he was able to stand in front of them again in such a short period of time.
Glancing at Sun Zhongming, who had turned into a dried corpse, Sun Zuchang asked with a trembling voice, "Did you plan all of this behind the scenes? How did you find out about this? You're not so old and muddle-headed after all." Chu Xiao looked at Sun Zuchang and Lu Clan's ancestor and spread his hands. "My principles are very simple. If someone wants to kill me, I'll kill them. Of course, when no one provokes me, I'm still very easy to talk to. You've successfully killed me once, so you can't blame me for bringing harm to your family. After saying so much, there's only one main point, and that is, all of you must die." Sun Zuchang and Lu Clan's ancestor exchanged looks. Without a word, they charged at Chu Xiao at the same time. In the past, in the illusory Six Realms, they had all seen the battle between Chu Xiao and Jingchan Jizong. Their strength was so powerful that it made people tremble. A real pellet state and a real fire spirit refinement state. As a result, the battle between the two of them actually unleashed the power of the heaven and earth mystic realm. This was simply terrifying. Why would he care about enmity now? Why would he care about techniques? If they didn't join forces, then it would really be like what Chu Xiao said. They all had to die. Lu Clan's ancestor's body was shining with lightning. The power of the ninth heaven thunder in mid-air was integrated into his spear. As the spear fell, a huge force was poured into it as if it was going to shatter the mountains and rivers. At the same time, Sun Zuchang sent a punch forward. Extreme power erupted from his aged body as layers of ice-true energy stacked on top of each other. Wherever it passed, snowflakes drifted down even though it was midsummer. With the support of the ice-true energy, the snowflakes were akin to icicles as they shot towards Chu Xiao in a densely packed manner. Chu Xiao stepped out. It seemed to be a light step, but it made the entire ground burst into a violent tremor. Countless gravel soared into the sky like an earth dragon turning over. Chu Xiao formed the colorless fixed palm print with one hand and directly resisted the spear of Lu Clan's ancestor. Even with the power of the ninth heaven thunder in it, the power of the spear was completely destroyed by the colorless fixed palm print. The spear head was directly held in Chu Xiao's hand. With a shake, the Lu Clan's divine weapon, Meteorite Thunder Spear, that had been passed down for thousands of years, was directly broken by Chu Xiao. Lu Clan's ancestor was also directly blown away by this force. At the same time, Chu Xiao's left fist fell. It was a simple punch, but it contained a powerful fist intent that could break the world. This even gave Sun Zuchang an illusion that he was facing Chen Qingdi. With a single punch, the ripples of power between the two of them exploded. Layers of ice crystals shattered and melted under the burning flames of inner force around Chu Xiao. The powerful force completely pulverized the surrounding rocks and soil. Sun Zuchang was also sent flying by this punch, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 854. One move shattered the divine weapon, repelled the Lu family's old ancestor, and seriously injured Sun Zuchang with one punch. Chu Xiao's current strength was simply terrifying. Looking at his hands, Chu Xiao wanted to shamelessly sigh at this moment. "I'm really strong." Chu Xiao's internal force didn't improve much compared to before. At the same time, his comprehension of heaven and earth didn't improve much. The only improvement was his understanding of martial arts in the past 6 months. However, the power contained in his body had increased exponentially, to the point that Chu Xiao himself couldn't adapt to it. Now, Chu Xiao finally understood why Xie Xiaolu, as Chen Qingdi's personal disciple, didn't completely inherit Chen Qingdi's tyrannical fist intent. It was very simple. Only a powerful body tempered by true fire could accommodate this unparalleled fist intent. However, the feeling of mastering extreme power was really good. At this time, in the outside world, the powerful force that Chu Xiao triggered erupted. It was like an earth dragon turning over, and the movement could be felt from more than 10 miles away. Qi Yuanli was so shocked that he couldn't care less about lying there. He looked in the direction of the two sides in surprise. The Sun family and the Lu family were actually playing such a big game. What exactly did they use? Were they preparing to perish together? Qi Yuanli wanted to send someone to take a look, but in this situation, the strength of the people he sent was too weak, and it was easy for them to be accidentally injured. However, if the strength of the people he sent was too strong,
It was easy to cause misunderstandings. So Qi Yuanli scratched his head and thought of a way. But at this moment, a more violent fluctuation came from the formation. There was even an extreme evil blood aura blooming, causing Qi Yuanli to feel a chill all over his body. At this time, inside the formation, Chu Xiu laughed. He formed a seal with his hands, and countless blood shadows flew out behind him, pouncing on the martial artists of the Sun family and Lu family below. As soon as the blood shadow technique was used, the entire battlefield was like a meat grinder. Anyone who touched it would die without a doubt. Even a martial Dao grandmaster could not resist a blood shadow. At most, they could entangle it for a while. The people from the Sun and Lu families, who were fighting to the death just now, were now working together to resist the blood shadows, but it was all in vain. Seeing his own disciple being slaughtered by Chu Xiu, the eyes of the patriarch of the Lu family turned red instantly. Chu Xiu, I will fight it out with you. As soon as he finished speaking, the Lu family's ancestor bit off a portion of his index finger. Blood splattered as he drew a lightning rune in the air. Different from the Thunder Talisman of Dragon Tiger Mountain, the Thunder Talisman drawn by the ancestor of the Lu clan was a pictographic talisman inscribed in ancient times when the human race first tried to record wind, rain, thunder, and lightning with words. It had a trace of connection with heaven and earth. The talisman only consisted of a few simple strokes, but it outlined the most original power of thunder in the world. As the talisman was completed, the sky was instantly filled with lightning sparks. Thunder roared in the air, and thunder rumbled. The patriarch of the Lu clan grabbed with one hand. 4 of his fingers clenched tightly in the void, and a lightning dragon shining with boundless thunderbolts was forcibly caught in his hand. It turned into a lightning dragon spear and pierced towards Chu Xiu with the unparalleled momentum of breaking armies. Controlling the power of heaven and earth with the power of a human, the Lu family's ancestor was suffering the backfire of thunder every second. Needless to say, he was also a ruthless person. He even cultivated such a forbidden secret technique. It was obvious that he really hated Chu Xiu to the extreme. As the greenish-purple lightning spear approached, Chu Xiu used his palm as a saber and slashed forward. The extremely pure demonic qi spread. Compared to the explosive and overbearing lightning dragon spear, the saber intent of Chu Xiu's saber even felt a little fleeting. However, it was this saber that seemed to have frozen the space. Everywhere it passed, the space was forcibly cut in half like a painting. The spear that was completely formed from the power of thunder was actually cut in half by this strange saber. Misty red dust slash. The heavenly demon dance was already useless. Although Chu Xiu used his palm as a saber and successfully used the misty red dust slash, when his palm collided with the power of thunder, he had to bear the brunt of the force. Therefore, Chu Xiu's right hand began to continuously explode in the thunder. However, the strange thing was that sometimes, even if the bones in Chu Xiu's hand exploded, it would immediately recover after a flash of blood. This was not the power of the demonic blood technique, but the true power of the eternal demon pill. Chu Xiu had successfully cultivated the eternal demon pill a long time ago. However, the truth was that Chu Xiu had never understood the function of the eternal demon pill. Until his body was reconstructed, Chu Xiu had thought that the eternal demon pill was only equivalent to strengthening the demonic blood technique and that it could protect his true spirit from being destroyed at crucial moments. However, if the eternal demon pill was really that simple, then Chu Xiu had underestimated Dugu Weiwei too much. Eternal and indestructible. Without experiencing true annihilation, how could one know what true indestructibility was? Only when one was at the juncture between annihilation and indestructibility could one comprehend the true meaning of the eternal demon pill and the true way to use it. Just like now, as long as Chu Xiu had enough power, he would be an indestructible existence as long as he stood here. On the entire battlefield, the power of blood and qi produced by tens of thousands of people was nourishment for Chu Xiu, the source of Chu Xiu's indestructibility. Under the red dust slash, even if the Lu family's ancestor used all his strength in his trump card, it was still useless in the face of absolute power. At this moment, the Lu family's ancestor glanced over at Sun Zuchang. At such a crucial moment, Sun Zuchang had actually escaped first and was about to escape the formation. The Lu family's people were about to die, but the Sun family still had a chance of survival. After all, he couldn't bring everyone from the Sun family to attack the Lu family. As long as he could escape and tell others that Chu Xiu was still alive, the Blue Dragon Society, Sabodhi Zen Monastery, and even the Elysium would definitely make a move. Therefore, at such a crucial moment, Sun Zuchang abandoned the Lu family's ancestor without hesitation and escaped first.
Where there's life, there's hope. Why did he have to risk his life? Even if someone risked their life, one person was enough.
Don't worry, I'll send him to accompany you later. As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of the Lu family's ancestor. He punched the Lu family's ancestor's head, causing it to explode. The headless corpse of the Lu family's ancestor slid down.
Chu Xiu didn't even look at it.
His body turned into a bloody light and he stomped on the ground with both feet.
Immediately, there was an explosive sound.
Chu Xiu's stomp created a huge pit that was dozens of feet wide. The power that could be unleashed purely from one's physical body was extremely shocking.
Chen Qingdi had already proven all of this. Now, Chu Xiu was the same.
This stomp exerted the power of his physical body to the extreme. Like a cannonball, Chu Xiu arrived behind the Sun family's ancestor in the blink of an eye. He formed a seal with his hand and a demonic bow appeared in Chu Xiu's hand. With one hand holding the bow and the other holding the bowstring, a demonic arrow with the power of nirvanic destruction condensed in Chu Xiu's hand. With a loud bang, it was shot straight at the Sun family's ancestor's back.
Triple City destroying arrow.
The Sun family's old ancestor felt the aura coming from behind him. A mysterious aura locked onto his surroundings, making it impossible for him to hide or evade. This arrow forced the Sun family's ancestor to turn around. He formed a fist seal and smashed it down crazily. In an instant, hundreds and thousands of seals were smashed down. A biting cold air condensed in front of him. The scene was like an iceberg lying in front of him. But under the power of the Triple City destruction arrow, everything was collapsing. The black arrow, the power of destruction, corroded everything. In the end, even one of Sun Zuchang's arms was completely eroded by the power of nirvanic destruction of the Triple City destroying arrow and began to collapse.
Sun Zuchang gritted his teeth.
His left hand's true qi turned into a blade and directly cut off his right arm. Chu Xiu had a mocking smile on his face. Are you still thinking that after you return to the Sun family, you can still protect the remaining disciples of the Sun family and leave a seed for the Sun family? Let me tell you a very unfortunate piece of news.
You're wrong.
Very wrong. Kill and destroy the heart.
Cut the weeds and remove the roots.
I've destroyed the Lu family and killed you.
How could I leave the Sun family's people alive?
Perhaps the disciples of the Sun family are already ahead of you. Just in time, I'll send you the ancestor to accompany them. Chu Xiu was used to doing things to the extreme, to the point of leaving no room for maneuver. The day before Sun Zuchang came to attack the Lu family, Chu Xiu had asked Yi Xiao to inform Luo Feiheng and Mu Zi's Heavenly Assassins branch and get them to help eliminate the Sun family. A portion of the people in Luo Feiheng's 9 branches were her most trusted subordinates. They were definitely the kind that could keep secrets. The Heavenly Assassins branch that Mu Zi was in was directly under her foster father, and she would definitely listen to everything that she said. If the two of them worked together, it wouldn't be difficult to eliminate the Sun family silently. However, when Sun Zuchang heard this, his eyes turned red. I'll fight it out with you. Sun Zuchang spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, which turned into a blood mist that drifted away and fused with the countless icicles in the air. In an instant, it was like a sky full of blood rain that came crashing down on Chu Xiu. However, the blood rain brought with it a boundless cold blade, as though it wanted to slice Chu Xiu into 1,000 pieces. However, Chu Xiu's body was burning with the blazing flames of his inner force. The moment the blood mist came into contact with Chu Xiu's body, it was completely melted by him. Step by step, he walked in front of Sun Zuchang. That powerful pressure made Sun Zuchang feel the fear of death. However, this fear also stimulated his ferocious nature. Just as Sun Zuchang was about to make his move, a blood-red shadow holding a sword appeared behind him without him noticing. The sword fell gracefully, and the blood-red sword directly broke through Sun Zuchang's protective true qi, piercing right through him.
Sun Zuchang looked at Chu Xiu in disbelief.
He wanted to turn his head back, but he didn't have the chance to do so. His vitality dissipated, and his body collapsed to the ground.
Chapter 855.
Outside the battleground of the Lu clan, the radiance of the Matrix was still flowing, but the surroundings were quiet, so quiet that it made people panic. Qi Yuanli led his men to approach the battleground carefully. It was not that he was afraid, but the scene before him was too strange. It was clearly a battle between two parties, but there was a different kind of fluctuation coming from it. In the end, even the slightest aura disappeared. Qi Yuanli had never seen such a strange thing. Even if both parties perished together, there should be at least one or two left, right? It was impossible that not even one was left alive. Qi Yuanli hesitated for a long time before approaching the battleground with his men, wanting to see what was going on. After entering the matrix, the expressions of all the warriors from Wind Sweeping Tower suddenly changed. As far as the eye could see, everything was blood red. Corpses were everywhere. The entire area covered by the matrix was completely soaked in blood. Countless corpses were lying on the ground, and one could clearly see that some of the corpses had been completely sucked dry, like dried corpses. In the end, they even found the corpses of the Sun Clan and the Lu Clan's patriarch. One was killed by a sword through the heart, and the other had his head smashed by a punch. If not for the relics on his body, Wind Sweeping Tower wouldn't even be able to recognize him. Qi Yuanli and his men looked at each other. There was only one thought in their minds. Something big had happened. The Sun family and the Lu family had a huge battle, but in the end, both sides were completely wiped out. Moreover, the ancestors of both sides were definitely not killed by each other. Could there be a third party involved? Who was it that could kill two true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators? Such a big matter was no longer something that Qi Yuanli could intervene in. He immediately went back to inform the leader of Wind Sweeping Tower, Fang Fifan, and also informed the Shongshui Ying clan. In theory, the Shongshui Ying clan was the leader of the 9 superclans, but in reality, the Shongshui Ying clan rarely meddled in other people's affairs. The fight between the 9 superclans had nothing to do with them, as long as the 9 superclans did not affect the Shongshui Ying clan. As the saying went, the 9 superclans were like water, and the Shongshui Ying clan was like iron. The Shongshui Ying clan could not be bothered with what happened to the others. However, the commotion this time was so huge that the Shongshui Ying clan sent Ying Sanshu over to investigate what was going on. On the morning of the third day, Ying Sanshu brought Ying Bailu to the battlefield of the Lu clan. As the future successor of the Shongshui Ying clan, Ying Bailu would have to deal with this mess sooner or later. It would be good for him to familiarize himself with it in advance. Fang Fifan didn't expect that the Ying clan of Shongshui would send the number 1 on the wind cloud list. He hurriedly walked over and cupped his hands. So it's Third Master Ying who has come in person. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. Ying Sanshu waved his hand and said, There's no need to be so polite. Tell me, what's the situation? After Fang Fifan told Ying Sanshu everything that happened that day, Ying Sanshu said indifferently, In that case, Qi Yuanli didn't see anyone leaving the array formation? Qi Yuanli smiled bitterly. My strength is weak. Someone might have left, but I didn't discover it. Ying Sanshu said indifferently, All right then. Bring me to see the corpse. Everyone stepped into the array formation. At this time, the ground was still littered with corpses. In order to protect the scene, Wind Sweeping Tower didn't clear away the corpses. They only set up a large-scale ice array in the periphery to prevent the corpses from rotting. Fang Fifan said, The people of Wind Sweeping Tower have checked all the corpses. Some of them died in the battle between the Sun Clan and the Lu Clan, but there were also corpses that died from various kinds of injuries. Some died with sabers, some with swords, and some were directly killed by a powerful force. In any case, there were all kinds of strange things. Most importantly, a large number of the corpses had their qi and blood completely sucked dry. I suspect that it was some kind of evil being or some big shot from the demonic path who had been in closed-door training for a long time that caused such an outcome. Ying Sanshu didn't answer. He just glanced at the corpses of the Lu clan and Sun clan's ancestor. After a while he said, I can't tell who did it, but I have a feeling that the punch that destroyed the Lu clan's ancestor had the feeling of Chen Qingdi. Fang Fifan was stunned. Chen Qingdi? But when the accident happened, Chen Qingdi was still in West Chu. Ying Sanshu just said indifferently, I only said it had the feeling of Chen Qingdi, but I didn't say it was Chen Qingdi. Also, that sword strike on the Sun Clan's ancestor's body, I even felt the feeling of Sword King City. But that sword strike should be a sneak attack, and there was a faint bloody aura on it. If the sword was used head-on, it might not be able to hurt the Sun Clan's ancestor. Fang Fifan scratched his head. He was sure that the person who did it wasn't Chen Qingdi, And it definitely wasn't the 3 true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators from Sword King City. During this period of time, almost all of them had appeared in their respective territories, and none of them had appeared in Eastern Qi. Ying Bailu, who was standing beside Ying Sanshu, didn't say anything. But he had a feeling that it was extremely familiar. After thinking about it, he couldn't find any clues. So, Ying Bailu didn't care anymore. A junior like him didn't have the qualifications to speak here. After saying all this, Ying Sanshu turned around and was about to leave. Fang Fifan was stunned. Master San, are you going to leave just like that? Ying Sanshu said indifferently. What else can I do? Help the Lu clan and Sun clan find the culprit? The Shangshui clan isn't the Guanzhong torture room. People are killed every day in the pugilistic world, and forces are annihilated every year. If we have to care about all of them, wouldn't our Ying clan be too busy? After saying that, Ying Sanshu left indifferently. His attitude was incomparably cold. Qi Yuanli, who was at the side, asked in a low voice, Tower Lord, what should we do next? Fang Fifan snorted lightly. Even the Shangshui clan, the head of the 9 great clans, can't be bothered to care about these things. Of course, our wind-sweeping tower won't. Just spread this news to the pugilistic world. There's no need to say anything. Just follow the facts. Wind-sweeping tower was curious about most things. Now that the 2 clans had died for no reason, Fang Fifan felt very uncomfortable. But Fang Fifan also knew that others could continue investigating this matter, but not their wind-sweeping tower. Someone who had the strength to annihilate 2 great clans and kill 2 true fire spirit refinement realm cultivators from the Sun clan and the Lu clan was definitely someone that wind-sweeping tower couldn't afford to offend. At this time, when this news came out in the pugilistic world, it almost caused an uproar in the pugilistic world. It was just too shocking. The Sun clan and the Lu clan were the 2 great clans that could be ranked in the middle among the 9 great clans. Both of them had experts in the true fire spirit refinement realm guarding them. But in the end, all of them died in one night. This was too shocking. The most shocking thing was that so many people died, but no one knew who did it. The other party could annihilate the 2 great clans without a sound. Did that mean that the other party could also annihilate other clans that were weaker than the Sun clan and the Lu clan without a sound? In short, this matter was a little strange. Moreover, the Sun clan from River East did not send all of their members to the Sun clan. Those who stayed behind to guard the Sun clan were also killed by a group of mysterious people. It was enough to show that the other party was targeting the Sun clan and the Lu clan. Some people suspected that this matter was done by the Yinma clan. After all, there were people from the Sun clan and the Lu clan among the forces that hit Chu Xiao when he was down. However, if it was done by the Yinma clan, they should have been eager to announce it. They would not have kept quiet all this time. Anyway, after this matter, the entire Eastern Qi pugilistic world was in a state of panic. Not to say that everyone was in danger. What people were afraid of was not a certain kind of powerful force. The most terrifying thing was the unknown. At this time, the culprit of this matter did not care about the news of the outside world. At the moment, Chu Xiao was in the Assassin's branch of the Blue Dragon Society. After killing the Sun clan's and Lu clan's ancestors, Chu Xiao sensed that there were people from the wind-sweeping tower watching from the side. He immediately left secretly with Yi Xiao to look for Mu Ziyi and Luo Fei Heng. By the time Chu Xiao arrived in Jiangdong, Mu Ziyi and Luo Fei Heng had already taken care of everyone. One had to say that when it came to killing, the Blue Dragon Society was really professional. Although only a few people came, most of the people from the Sun clan were taken care of by the Blue Dragon Society. At this time in the Blue Dragon Society, Luo Fei Heng was leaning towards Mu Ziyi and asked, I say, Chu Xiao, you are so strong now. You could even blow the head of the Lu clan's ancestor with one punch. Why are you still hiding? Just reveal your identity and take revenge one by one. Chu Xiao glanced at Luo Fei Heng and did not say anything. This woman's motive was not pure. How could a woman who dared to go to a brothel to pick up girls be an ordinary woman? Of course, Mu Ziyi didn't mind. She just felt that this heroic big sister was a bit too enthusiastic. Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, Haven't you heard of the saying, it's easy to dodge a spear in the open, but hard to guard against a stab in the dark? The unknown is the scariest. You can obviously set up a trap in the dark, so why reveal your identity and foolishly fight with them? Luo Fei Heng clicked her tongue and said, Just say that you, Chu Xiao, are treacherous. After muttering, Luo Feiheng grabbed Mu Zi's arm and didn't let go. His hand unconsciously hugged Mu Zi's waist. Chu Xiao looked at Mu Zi and asked, "Zi, what's the reply from your adoptive father?" Mu Zi said, "Adoptive father said that he is willing to cooperate with young master, but there is only one condition. Bu Tiannan can die, but the Blue Dragon Society must be preserved." Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Of course, this is not a problem. The only person who has a grudge against me is Bu Tiannan. The Blue Dragon Society won't be affected. Moreover, don't forget that I used to be from the Blue Dragon Society. In fact, I still have feelings for the Blue Dragon Society." Mu Zi said, "That's good. Adoptive father said that he will find a chance to discuss with you in detail." Chu Xiao was surprised and said, "Isn't your adoptive father imprisoned in the Blue Dragon Society by Bu Tiannan?" Mu Zi said, "He is only imprisoned in the Blue Dragon Society, but adoptive father can still do other things. He has a secret treasure researched by the Black Tortoise School, so he can communicate with you from a distance. However, the fluctuations of the formation are too big, and it will easily attract Bu Tiannan's attention. So, we have to wait for a suitable time." Chu Xiao nodded. Once Duanmu Qianshan looks for him, he would immediately let Mu Zi inform him. During this period of time, Chu Xiao was preparing to go into seclusion. Firstly, he wanted to familiarize himself with his body that had become stronger, and secondly, he wanted to cultivate the cultivation technique he had obtained from the Sun and Lu families, the Black Tortoise True Technique. Chapter 856. The Sun family and Lu family were among the 9 great families, and their strength was not weak. This time, the two sides were able to fight to the death not only because of Chu Xiao's provocation, but also because of this secret art. Even a 9-revolution secret art might not be able to make the Sun and Lu families so excited. In Chu Xiao's view, this secret art was definitely a supreme secret art. Moreover, how could a secret art that could be collected and passed down by High Heaven sect be ordinary? This Black Tortoise True art was not a secret art of High Heaven sect, but was instead left behind by an ancient master. That master and the former High Heaven sect master were rivals, but they had a mutual respect for each other. He did not have a disciple, but after a fierce battle, when he was on the verge of death, he chose to pass on his secret art to High Heaven sect. The strength of this Black Tortoise True art lay in the fact that it was not a single secret art, but a collection of 10 secret arts. These 10 secret arts were Peerless Saber Art, Seek the Heavens Spear Art, Heaven's Mandate Sword Way, Great Change Halberd Art, Tiger Roaring Staff Collection, Mountain and Sea Fist Scripture, Black Tortoise Divine Palm, Fierce Kick Technique, Perfect Golden Finger, and Turtle Bone Dragon Claw. This secret art was a combination of 10 martial skills: saber, spear, sword, halberd, fist, palm, leg, claw, and finger. It was simply amazing. Chu Xiao thought that the martial skills he possessed were diverse enough. He cultivated the Tao, Buddhist, and demonic paths, and was proficient in palm techniques, seal techniques, fist techniques, and saber techniques. However, this ancient master had actually combined 10 secret arts into one to form the Black Tortoise True art. It could be said that this master had gone further and stronger than Chu Xiao. Moreover, Chu Xiao could guarantee that the other party had cultivated these 10 martial skills to the extreme, reaching the point of mastery. The reason was simple. If you didn't cultivate one martial Tao to the extreme, how could you fuse it with other martial Tao? This Black Tortoise True technique could be said to be quite in line with Chu Xiao's taste, especially now that Chu Xiao needed to conceal his identity. It would be best if he didn't use those signature martial skills of the past. However, this Black Tortoise True technique forcefully condensed 10 martial skills into one body. It just so happened that in terms of martial skills, it could perfectly conceal Chu Xiao's identity. However, there was still another difficulty in cultivating the Black Tortoise True technique, and that was the problem of weapons. Some martial skills could only be used with weapons. With the secret space box, it was easy to carry around sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. However, Chu Xiao was too lazy to even use a low-grade divine weapon, let alone a precious weapon. Fortunately, the ancient powerhouse who created the Black Tortoise True technique seemed to have thought of this problem. Hence, there was also a blueprint for the refinement of weapons in the cultivation method, called the Heavenly War Box. The Heavenly War Box was not a type of weapon. It was a box filled with tiny mechanisms and arrays. When activated, those tiny parts of the mechanisms could instantly form sabers, spears, swords, and halberds. However, the refinement of the Heavenly War Box was too difficult. There couldn't be a single mistake in those tiny parts of the mechanisms. If there was a mistake, the entire Heavenly War Box would immediately collapse.
Chu Xiu thought about it.
In the current world, there were almost only a handful of people who were qualified to create the Heavenly War Box.
Master blacksmith Mo Yezi was one of them. This time, he still had to trouble Mo Yezi. Moreover, Chu Xiu trusted Mo Yezi enough.
This old man had already resigned from his position as the pavilion master of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, but he was still willing to help Luo Fei Hung to fight against the Luo clan. It was enough to show that he was closer to Luo Fei Hung than to his own son. Therefore, Chu Xiu directly took out the top-grade materials he collected from the Lu clan and the Sun clan and asked Luo Fei Hung to send them to Mo Yezi to help him create the Heavenly War Box. As for the remaining materials, it would be considered as a reward for Master Mo Yezi. In fact, the Mirror Lake Villa had not been doing too well in recent years. Of course, it was compared to when Mo Yezi was the pavilion master of the Divine Weapon Pavilion. When Mo Yezi was the pavilion master of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, he could use almost all the materials in the Divine Weapon Pavilion. But now, he was no longer the pavilion master. Although the Mirror Lake Villa also accepted forging requests, it could not be compared to the Divine Weapon Pavilion. Therefore, in recent years, Mo Yezi had forged very few divine weapons. There were only 2 or 3 of them, including Chu Xiu's Heavenly Demon Dance. Therefore, when he saw the unconstrained design of the Heavenly War Box, Mo Yezi was instantly moved. Even if he had to pay for the materials, he was still willing to forge it, not to mention that Chu Xiu had given him a lot of materials. However, Mo Yezi also had some old habits. When he forged a weapon, he first had to look at the person using the weapon. Luo Fei Hung said a few words, and Mo Yezi was able to guess Chu Xiu's identity. Although he was shocked, Mo Yezi was not shocked for too long. He lived in the pugilistic world, but he could only be considered as half a member of the pugilistic world. He was not interested in the grudges and benefits of the pugilistic world. From his point of view, these things were not as interesting as the metal in his hands. Therefore, even though he knew, Mo Yezi did not say anything. He immediately turned all his attention to the Heavenly War Box. After everything was arranged, Chu Xiu went into seclusion to cultivate with peace of mind. Yi Xiao was also thrown to the 2 experts of the Heavenly Assassins branch, Han Lei and Song Xiao of the Blue Dragon Society's 4 great blood killers to train. From Chu Xiu's point of view, Yi Xiao's potential was not bad. This potential was not referring to his martial arts potential, but his temperament. Under normal circumstances, he could endure patiently. When it was time to be ruthless, he was not careless. He was worth training. Moreover, Yi Xiao had helped him so much this time, so he was worth training. No matter what, he could be considered half a disciple of his. A month later, in the underground hall of the Heavenly Assassins branch, Han Lei and Song Xiao were looking through some missions. During this period of time, because of Chu Xiu, whether it was Mu Zi or the 2 of them, they all stayed in the Heavenly Assassins branch and rarely went out to carry out missions. Most of the missions were handed over to their subordinates. For example, after Yi Xiao was brought along by Han Lei and Song Xiao to carry out 2 missions, he was thrown aside and went out to carry out missions alone. The Blue Dragon Society's training of assassins had always been very simple. When they sent you to kill someone, and you killed that person, then you would be a good assassin. If you were killed, then you would be trash. It was very simple and crude. Although Yi Xiao was personally thrown over by Chu Xiu, Han Lei and Song Xiao did not hesitate. They trained him as they should. This was because they believed that a piece of trash was not worth Chu Xiu's personal training. In the headquarters of the Heavenly Assassins branch, Han Lei and Song Xiao did not wear masks. Song Xiao was a middle-aged man with an ordinary appearance. He always had a smile on his face. When he grinned, there were a few more wrinkles on his brows. He looked like a kind old farmer. No one would believe that such a person was actually the top assassin of the Blue Dragon Society, one of the 4 great blood killers whose hands were stained with blood. At this moment, Song Xiao was mumbling like a chatterbox. Say, do you think the young miss is interested in Chu Xiu? From the looks of it, it seems like she wants to devote her life to him.
But this is also good. The young miss has suffered too much these past few years. Such a beautiful woman has been soaking in a storm of blood every day. Not many men can stand it. As for Lord Chu Xiao, he was also born in the Blue Dragon Society. He can't be considered an outsider. To our young miss, he even saved her life. How nice would it be for her to devote her life to him? Song Xiao often laughed, but Han Lei did not cry. He looked slightly younger than Song Xiao, but his face was cold. A knife scar ran from his forehead all the way to his chin. It was as if he had almost been cut in half. Hearing this, Han Lei only said calmly, "Wrong. It's not a prince or a beauty. It's a demon and a female assassin. They are both bloodthirsty." Song Xiao said angrily, "Why are you so insensitive? Who cares what he is? The young miss will have a good husband in the future, won't it? Besides, with such a connection, even if it's not the entire Azure Dragon Society, the second dragon head's bloodline will be in-laws with His Excellency Chu. Wouldn't it be great to have such a powerful backer?" Han Lei wiped his sword and said, "Everything depends on yourself. Don't always think of relying on others." Song Xiao was so angry that he rolled his eyes. The two of them were not on the same wavelength. As he flipped through the mission, he muttered, "I've never worked with you my whole life." At this moment, Mu Zi walked over and said, "Uncle Han, Uncle Song, what are you talking about?" Song Xiao hurriedly shook his head and said, "Nothing, young miss. What's the matter?" Mu Zi's face was full of smiles as she said, "Godfather sent news. I will tell young Master Chu now." As she said this, Mu Zi jogged to find Chu Xiao. Song Xiao turned around and said to Han Lei, "How is it? Didn't I say young miss is interested in official Chu? Since when does young miss have such a happy time? The number of times she smiles in a year can be counted." Han Lei said indifferently, "Love is the most difficult word to understand. Only when you cut the threads of love with your sword do you know how painful it is. You are heartless. Using your eyes to look at young miss is laughable." Song Xiao rolled his eyes a few times. He felt that he had never been angered to death after working with Han Lei for so many years. His will was definitely strong. At this time, Chu Xiao was still in seclusion. He had already grasped the basics of Black Tortoise True technique. The difficulty was actually not too high. Most of the cultivation techniques, such as fist arts, palm arts, and saber arts, Chu Xiao had already dabbled in them, so he was able to learn them very quickly. As for those that Chu Xiao had not come into contact with, he needed to understand and cultivate them properly. Of course, it was easy to grasp the basics, but to completely master them was not something that could be done in a month. So for the rest of the time, Chu Xiao was familiarizing himself with the power of this body. Right now, Chu Xiao's realm was very strange. His physical body was already like Chen Qingdi's, reaching the true fire spirit refinement realm. For people like the Sun family's old ancestor, he could destroy them with a wave of his hand. But his own realm was still the real pellet state. So he still had to comprehend the heaven and earth to reach the true fire spirit refinement realm. This was not something that could be achieved by hard work. It also required opportunities and comprehension. At this time, hearing Mu Zi's voice coming from outside, Chu Xiao also immediately ended his seclusion and walked out. There should be news from Duanmu Qianshan. Chapter 857. Is there news from your adoptive father? Chu Xiao asked directly. Mu Zi nodded and said, "Butianan is out. Adoptive father can contact us at this time." With that said, Mu Zi directly brought Chu Xiao to her room. Mu Zi's room wasn't decorated as exquisitely as other women's. Instead, it was very simple. Aside from the rows of elixirs in the cabinet, there was also a list of tasks and techniques. Mu Zi took out a formation plate with some complicated mechanisms on it. This is the Mother and Child Dragon and Phoenix 1,000 Miles image formation plate refined by the Black Tortoise sect. It is said that it was refined from a strange insect. This kind of strange insect is born with a female and a male. No matter how far apart they are, they can still find each other. However, this kind of strange insect seems to be completely extinct now. This pair of formation plates was found by Uncle Han and Uncle Song when they were carrying out a task. They gave it to adoptive father. As Mu Zi fiddled with it, the formation lit up,
and an old man in white appeared in the light. The old man's hair and beard were all white, and he wore a Confucian robe. His facial features were kind and refined, making him look like an old man who taught in an institute. Who could ever have guessed that someone like that would be the second head of the Azure Dragon Society? In fact, the fact that the Azure Dragon Society had grown to such a large scale had a lot to do with him.
Official Chu, I have heard a lot about you. Duanmu Qianshan smiled and cupped his hands at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu also cupped his hands and said, I should be the one who has heard a lot about you. For the Blue Dragon Society to have such a scale, I admire not Butiannan, but you, Senior Duanmu. Duanmu Qianshan shook his head with a wry smile and said, but it is also because of me that the Blue Dragon Society has reached this point. I approved of Butiannan becoming the second dragon head, but now it seems that he is more suitable to be an assassin than to lead the Blue Dragon Society. This is a big mistake. At this point, Duanmu Qianshan's expression became solemn, and he said to Chu Xiu in a deep voice, Darren Chu, time is of the essence, so this old man will not keep you in suspense. Regarding the matter of Butiannan, my attitude is the same as Darren Chu, and that is to kill. I want to kill Butiannan not because he deprived me of my power. In fact, if he could manage the Blue Dragon Society well, I would have wanted to retire a long time ago after working for the Blue Dragon Society for my whole life. However, Butiannan is a temperamental person, and the entire Blue Dragon Society has been heading in the wrong direction under his leadership. In addition, he easily believed the slanderous words of villains and acted wantonly in the Blue Dragon Society. The wealth that the Blue Dragon Society has accumulated over the years is no longer enough for Butiannan. Therefore, I am willing to cooperate with Official Chu to get rid of Butiannan. Chu Xiu nodded. He was waiting for Duanmu Qianshan to say this. Butiannan was not the Sun or Lu family's ancestor. He was a ruthless person who dared to go against the Great Light Temple's Su Yun, and he was even in the top 10 of the honor list. Even though Chu Xiu's strength had greatly improved, it would not be easy to kill him. However, if Duanmu Qianshan cooperated and attacked from both sides, it would be much easier. However, at this moment, Duanmu Qianshan said, However, I have another condition, and I hope that Official Chu can agree to it. What condition? Enter my Blue Dragon Society and become the new chief dragon. Duanmu Qianshan's words were shocking, and even Mu Zi was shocked. This was because Duanmu Qianshan had never mentioned this to her before. Chu Xiu squinted at Duanmu Qianshan. To be honest, he was at ease with Mu Zi, but he had never been at ease with Duanmu Qianshan. Don't be fooled by this old man's kind face. He was just like an old teacher. However, he was an assassin from the Blue Dragon Society. To be able to become the second dragon, how many lives had he taken? Moreover, it was this old man in front of him. When he could become the chief dragon, he gave up his position and supported Butiannan. It could be said that everything in the Blue Dragon Society was created by him. Butiannan, who only knew how to kill people and cause trouble, couldn't have done these things. This old man was definitely a ruthless person, but now, he wanted to give the Blue Dragon Society to Chu Xiu. If Chu Xiu happily agreed, then he would be a real idiot. Knocking on the table, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, Senior Duanmu, are you joking? You and I spent so much effort to kill Butiannan, but in the end, you want to give the Blue Dragon Society to an outsider like me. What are you after? In the entire Blue Dragon Society, whether it is the headquarters or the 36 Big Dipper divisions, half of them respect you. As long as you kill Butiannan, you will become the chief dragon. Aside from a few die-hard supporters of Butiannan, who in the entire Blue Dragon Society will not be convinced. Why do you still want to give the Blue Dragon Society to me? Duanmu Qianshan sighed, shook his head, and said, Official Chu is wrong. I don't want to give the Blue Dragon Society to you, but I want you to become the chief dragon to guarantee the interests of the Blue Dragon Society. Of course, you can also understand it as the Blue Dragon Society joining hands with you. You can use the power of the Blue Dragon Society, but you have to guarantee the interests of the Blue Dragon Society first. That's right, Official Chu. What do you think of the Blue Dragon Society now? What will the future hold? Chu Xiu thought for a moment and said, Not much. Senior Duanmu, you did a good job before. The Blue Dragon Society is just a sword in the hands of the people of the martial world. As long as there are killings and hatred in the martial world,
the Blue Dragon Society will have its value. In fact, the more killings there are, the stronger the Blue Dragon Society will become. But now it is different. The Blue Dragon Society is mixed with too much karma. A sword mixed with so much karma is no longer useful. Even if we kill Bu Tiannan now, the karma has already been formed. It will not be easy to get rid of it completely. Duanmu Qianshan sighed and said, "That's right. Official Chu, you see it very clearly. The cycle of karma and retribution. Many people in the martial world know this, but no one can avoid it. Even if Bu Tiannan dies, the karma that my Blue Dragon Society has formed will be repaid by the remaining people. Therefore, I handed the Blue Dragon Society to you, Official Chu. I want to borrow Official Chu's hand to block this karma and help the future of the Blue Dragon Society." Duanmu Qianshan pointed at himself and smiled bitterly. "I am already old and can't fight anymore. Back then, I gave the position of First Dragon Head to Bu Tiannan because he will be stronger than me in the future. I misjudged him once, but I believe that I will not misjudge him a second time. Now, Official Chu, you are already stronger than I. In the entire martial world, the only person who can bear the karma for the Blue Dragon Society and is willing to do so is you, Official Chu. Strictly speaking, Official Chu, you are also from the Blue Dragon Society. If you take over the position of First Dragon Head, the impact on the people below will be smaller." Chu Xiu smiled faintly and said, "Senior Duanmu, how do you know that I am willing?" Duanmu Qianshan said in a deep voice, "Because the Blue Dragon Society is qualified and strong enough to give Official Chu enough strength and influence. Although the current Blue Dragon Society cannot be compared to the sects that stand at the peak of the martial world, as the head of the four spirits, the Blue Dragon Society is strong enough to destroy all the martial world forces that are one rank lower." Chu Xiu looked at Duanmu Qianshan deeply. Although this old man misjudged him once, this time, he really saw through Chu Xiu's heart. The power of the Blue Dragon Society. Chu Xiu really wanted it. It was not because of anything else, but because the Blue Dragon Society was really strong. At present, Chu Xiu mainly had 3 groups of people under him. One of them was a martial artist from the Guanzhong torture room. Their fighting strength was average, but their ability was outstanding and suitable for defending. The other group was given to him by Wei Shuya. They were some of the younger martial artists from the Hidden Devil clan. These martial artists were not weak and had great potential. However, their personalities were different, so it was not easy to control them. The last group was the first group that followed him. They were martial artists from the Heavenly Sin branch of the Blue Dragon Society. These people were the most useful. They were all elite assassins from the Heavenly Sin branch. They were strong, ruthless, and obedient. They were simply the best killing machines. If a person from the Heavenly Sin branch had this kind of power, then if Chu Xiu took in the entire Blue Dragon Society, the power would be unimaginable. However, Chu Xiu did not agree immediately. He only said indifferently, "Senior Duanmu, Bu Tiannan is very afraid of you now. Aren't you afraid that I will also be afraid of you when I take over the position of First Dragon Head? You have to know that it is a very serious matter to have one's achievements overshadow the leader." Duanmu Qianshan shook his head and said, "Of course not. Official Chu, if you were really such a person, the Zhenwu Hall would not have developed to such a scale. Moreover, Official Chu, even if you are afraid of me, it is not a big deal. Because at this stage, only I can help you, Official Chu. If Bu Tiannan really dies, Official Chu, you can only rely on I's prestige to control the entire Blue Dragon Society. Furthermore, this old man doesn't have much longer to live. By the time this old man dies, Lord Chu's prestige will already be set. Moreover, I does not have any heirs or inheritors. So, Official Chu, you do not have to worry that someone will fight for power with you." At this point, Duanmu Qianshan glanced at the silent Mu Zi and said, "If you want to talk about inheritors, this girl can be considered one. However, my silly daughter listens to Sir Chu's every word. Sir Chu's words are more effective than mine. She won't betray anyone who dares to betray you. After I dies, this silly girl will definitely be loyal to you, Official Chu. At that time, Blue Dragon Society will completely belong to you, Official Chu. After that, whether Official Chu is willing to maintain the Blue Dragon Society or do something else, I will already be in the grave by then, so I will not be able to care so much." After Duanmu Qianshan finished speaking, Mu Zi's face was a little red. She did not expect that Duanmu Qianshan would suddenly mention her. She secretly glanced at Chu Xiao and found that Chu Xiao was in deep thought. In fact, when dealing with an old fox like Duanmu Qianshan, one must be cautious. However, Chu Xiao also found that Duanmu Qianshan was very similar to Wei Shuya. They were both old and scheming for the sake of their foundation, but not for themselves. This matter was more beneficial than harmful to Chu Xiao, at least for now. So after thinking for a moment, Chu Xiao said in a deep voice, "Then it would be impolite for me to refuse. I also want to sit in Bu Tiannan's position." Chapter 858. Knowing that Chu Xiao could enter the Blue Dragon Society, Mu Zi was the happiest one. It was needless to say what Chu Xiao meant to Mu Zi, and Duanmu Qianshan treated her like his own daughter. Therefore, Mu Zi had always been worried that Chu Xiao would become enemies with the Blue Dragon Society because of Bu Tiannan. But now, Chu Xiao had entered the Blue Dragon Society. Not only did they not have to be enemies, but they could also be on the same side. Because time was limited, Chu Xiao was afraid that Bu Tiannan would suddenly return. After reaching an agreement with Duanmu Qianshan, they quickly agreed on the next plan. 3 months later was the triennial gathering of the Blue Dragon Society. At this time, the leaders of the 36 Big Dipper divisions would return to the headquarters and report on their recent missions. Originally, these things were handled by Duanmu Qianshan, but now that Duanmu Qianshan was imprisoned, these things were thrown by Bu Tiannan to a layman like Duan Tianlang. No one knew how well he could do. Chu Xiao and Duanmu Qianshan agreed to take action at this time to get rid of Bu Tiannan and enter the Blue Dragon Society. However, during this time, Chu Xiao could not be idle. Although he had stayed in the Blue Dragon Society before, he was just an ordinary low-level assassin. Now that Chu Xiao was going to be the leader of the Azure Dragon Society, he had to pick out a few outstanding battle achievements. That way, he would be able to answer to his subordinates. Therefore, during this time, the Assassin's Branch was temporarily under Chu Xiao's control. He could also complete a big mission as a proof of loyalty. Chu Xiao was also very curious. Wouldn't the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society take care of this matter? However, Duanmu Qianshan's answer made Chu Xiao speechless. In the past there were indeed people in charge. The branch leader had to be personally appointed by the Great Dragon Head. Furthermore, every year, they had to report everything that happened in the branch. In the end, Bu Tiannan found it troublesome, but he was still worried about Duanmu Qianshan holding too much power, so he let the major divisions manage independently, and only reported to the higher-ups once every 3 years. This was also the reason why Duan Tianlang dared to scheme against his subordinates when Chu Xiao was still in the Heavenly Sin branch. No one would care about it. Hearing this, Chu Xiao was also a little speechless. The Blue Dragon Society had not completely collapsed after being toyed with by Bu Tiannan. Other than Duanmu Qianshan's patience, it could only be said that Bu Tiannan was lucky. The world of martial arts was huge, and there were definitely times when the news did not come and go in a timely manner. But no matter how late it was, the headquarters still had to keep an eye on the news of the various branches at all times to prevent their subordinates from growing too powerful. For example, although the headquarters of the Wind Sweeping Building was in Eastern Qi, the Northern Yen branch and the West Chu branch were in contact almost all the time. Although the other sects did not communicate as frequently as the Wind Sweeping Building, they would not be like Bu Tiannan, who did not care once every 3 years and allowed his subordinates to do as they pleased. Since he had decided to act as a member of the Assassin's Branch, Chu Xiao naturally had to think of another identity. In the world of martial arts, it was absolutely necessary to have a smurf. Previously, Chu Xiao had used the name Lin Yi. Naturally, he could not use it anymore, so Chu Xiao directly changed his name to Lin Shui. When Luo Fei Hung heard this name, he felt a little strange. Chu Xiao usually liked to wear black clothes, so why was he called Shui? Chu Xiao explained that he had killed many people, so the blood was enough to dye the black clothes red. However, Luo Fei Hung ridiculed him on the side. Chu Xiao was purely showing off out of habit. In terms of pretentiousness, Shui was obviously much better than black-clothed. After looking through the missions of the Assassin's Branch, Chu Xiao frowned and said, "Eastern Qi is such a big place, and the Assassin's Branch only has these few missions? There is not a single one that can be taken out." It was not that Chu Xiao felt that the missions were too difficult, but that they were too simple. Since it was to prove his loyalty, He naturally had to make a name for himself. However, the strongest assassination targets in these missions were only at the Unity of the World realm. For Chu Xiu, the difficulty was too low. Song Xiao smiled bitterly and said, "Official Chu, the Assassin's Branch is just a branch. This is already the highest number of missions that they can receive. A mission to assassinate a martial Dao Grandmaster would definitely be sent to the headquarters. They wouldn't come to our Assassin's Branch." Chu Xiu nodded and looked at Luo Feiheng. "Right. Do you have any enemies? I can help you eliminate them for free. It's a rare opportunity." Luo Feiheng's eyes twitched. To be honest, although the Luo family was struggling at death's door, she really wanted to eliminate that disgusting family. However, the Luo family was the place where she was born and raised. She was not Chu Xiu, who would not be so heartless as to eliminate her own family. However, Luo Feiheng suddenly thought of something. She quickly said, "There is indeed a force that has some enmity with me, but they also have an indirect enmity with you." "What force?" "One of the 7 sects, the Longevity Sword Sect." Chu Xiu thought for a moment and shook his head. "Never heard of it." Luo Feiheng said, "Back then, after you eliminated the Azure Water Sword Sect, in order to seize the position of one of the 7 sects, there was quite a commotion in the martial world. In the end, the Longevity Sword Sect won. The reason why the Longevity Sword Sect was able to seize the position was actually related to the Hidden Sword Villa. The sect leader of the Longevity Sword Sect, Feng Chongxing, and the Manor Lord of the Hidden Sword Villa, Cheng Tingshan, were sworn brothers. Feng Chongxing himself was supported by Cheng Tingshan, and even the divine weapon in his hand, the 36th ranked Flowing Fire, was given to him by Cheng Tingshan. From what I know, you have quite a deep enmity with the Hidden Sword Villa. Back then, Cheng Tingshan was one of the people who brought the Heaven Gate Divine General to kill you. With the relationship between the two of them, if you want to deal with the Hidden Sword Villa in the future, the entire Longevity Sword Sect will stand with the Hidden Sword Villa. Now that you have dealt with them, it can be considered as taking the initiative to gain the upper hand. Of course, this Longevity Sword Sect is also very detestable. Do they really think that they can be so arrogant just because they are one of the 7 sects and 8 schools? Previously, they even dared to touch the people of my 9 divisions. If it wasn't for Dean Xiao telling me to calm down, this old lady would definitely not let them off. Chu Xiu knocked on the table and said, "All right then, the first battle shall be against the Longevity Sword Sect." At this moment Luo Feiheng spoke again. "All right, there is one more thing. Your Heavenly Law War case has been forged. You can go and collect it now." Chu Xiu was slightly startled. So fast? Normally, forging a divine weapon would take a month, and some would take a few years. As a blacksmith master, it was possible for Mo Yezi to forge a divine weapon in a month. However, Chu Xiu had seen the blueprints of the Heavenly Law War case. There were many complicated mechanisms, and it didn't seem like it could be forged in a short period of time. Luo Feiheng said, "I also don't know what happened, but Godfather said that although the weapon was forged, there was a problem and he needed to inform you." Chu Xiu nodded and followed Luo Feiheng to the Mirror Lake Villa. At this time, it was not convenient for Chu Xiu to show his original appearance, so he directly put on the Blue Dragon Society mask and black iron conical hat. He put on a blood-red robe and followed Luo Feiheng to the Mirror Lake Villa at night. When Mo Yezi first saw Chu Xiu, he wasn't surprised. He was a veteran in the pugilistic world. Although he had only been forging for many years and didn't participate in the pugilistic world's disputes, he had experienced many things. Resurrection might seem mysterious to others, but it wasn't impossible. Therefore, Mo Yezi didn't say much and directly took out the Heavenly Law War case. It was a silver-white iron case that was 3 feet long. There were countless runes engraved on it, and it didn't look ordinary. Mo Yezi said, "Chu, you can give it a try." Chu Xiu nodded and channeled a strand of vital energy into the Heaven's Way war case. In an instant, he sensed that the weapon spirit in the Heaven's Way war case was responding to him. At the next moment, a series of crisp mechanical sounds rang out, and the Heaven's Way war case turned into a huge battle blade. Different from the demonic dance's scimitar, this huge war saber was almost as tall as a person. The blade was wide, and the handle was long and narrow. It looked very domineering. The war saber evolved from the Heavenly Law War case was called the Peerless Heavenly Saber. As Chu Xiu poured chi into it again, the Peerless Heavenly Saber turned into a long spear.
According to the blueprint, it should be called the Heaven-Seeking Tyrannical Spear. Chu Xiu said doubtfully. The Heavenly Law War Case is refined very well. It's basically the same as described in the blueprint. What's the problem? Mo Yezi shook his head and said, this is not the peak state of the Heavenly Law War Case. According to the blueprint, the Heavenly Law War Case should be a supreme-grade weapon at its peak. But look at it now. The strength of the weapon transformed by the Heavenly Law War Case is only between low-grade and mid-grade. It can't even reach high-grade. This kind of strength is far inferior to your demonic dance, and it can't bring out its full effect. At the end of the day, it's still a problem of materials. The materials you gave me are some extremely precious refining materials. They can be considered supreme grade. However, there's still a key material missing to forge the core of the Heavenly Law War Case. I replaced it with other materials. Although I succeeded, as you can see, its strength doesn't meet the peak standard of the Heavenly Law War Case. Where can I find that material? Mo Yezi hesitated for a moment and said, the material is called the meteoric meteorite iron. When a meteorite falls from the sky to the ground, because of its extreme speed, it burns in the heaven and earth yuan qi. Finally, with the power of the heaven and earth, it is refined into gold. Moreover, when it falls, it must fall into a cold pond in an extremely cold place. In an instant, the cold and heat alternates, and only then can the meteoric meteorite iron be created. However, although meteorites from outer space are common, it's rare for it to be refined into gold when it falls. Moreover, it's even rarer for it to fall into a cold pond. So far, the only weapon made from the meteoric meteorite iron that I know of is the 26th divine weapon in the famous sword manual, the Flowing Light Evil Moon. It's currently in the Hidden Sword Villa's collection. Chu Xiu's squinted eyes revealed a hint of coldness. The Hidden Sword Villa again. When it was time to settle the score with the Hidden Sword Villa, he would have another reason. Chapter 859. The Longevity Sword Sect wasn't actually located in eastern Qi, but in Wei County. To be more precise, it was a new sect built on the site of the Azure Water Sword Sect. The Azure Water Sword Sect used to be the #1 sect in Wei County. With the combined strength of the entire Wei County, it was enough to support the Azure Water Sword Sect. Therefore, it was such a waste to leave such a place unattended. The Longevity Sword Sect's Feng Chongqing was quite a character and had good foresight. He immediately took a liking to this unclaimed land and saved himself a lot of trouble. Moreover, the Azure Water Sword Sect was indeed a good place. The mountains were verdant, the water was clear, and the feng shui was good. Otherwise, the Azure Water Sword Sect's ancestors wouldn't have built the sect here. At the same time, in the Azure Water Sword Sect, in the Longevity Sword Sect, Feng Chongqing looked at the surrounding pavilions and nodded in satisfaction. Feng Chongqing was a middle-aged martial artist with a dignified appearance. He wore a white robe and had a tall stature. He looked dignified without being angry and had the bearing of a sect leader. However, only he and his sworn brother, Cheng Tingshan, knew just how low Feng Chongqing's starting point was. In his early years, he was an illiterate farmer's son. His name wasn't Feng Chongqing, but Feng Shuixing. It was only when he accidentally came into contact with the martial Tao that he stepped into the pugilistic world step by step. After decades of hard work, he finally had the foundation he had today. Outsiders said that he was just a dog raised by Cheng Tingshan. Now that he was one of the 7 sects, he still listened to the Hidden Sword Villa. It was embarrassing, but Feng Chongqing didn't care. Those people were just jealous. They wanted the support of the Hidden Sword Villa but didn't have the chance. What right did he have to become sworn brothers with Cheng Tingshan? It was because he helped Cheng Tingshan block 3 slashes and almost had his dantian destroyed. These 3 slashes were exchanged for Cheng Tingshan's unconditional trust, the Wildfire Divine Weapon, and the foundation of the Longevity Sword Sect. Feng Chongqing called over a trusted disciple and asked, "How many sects in Wei County have yet to send their visiting cards?" The disciple hesitated for a moment before replying, 60%. Feng Chongqing couldn't help but snort. They won't give up until they see the coffin. If our Longevity Sword Sect doesn't make a move, do you really think we're pushovers? In the past, the Azure Water Sword Sect had already declined to such a state, but this group of people were still respectful. Now that my Longevity Sword Sect is here, they are still unconvinced. This is simply preposterous.
Although that was what Feng Chongqing said, he also felt very helpless. In the past, the Azure Water Sword sect was able to possess such prowess because of Lu Gongyuan's reputation. Although fame was something that couldn't be seen or touched, it was something that had to be fought for. Even though the Azure Water Sword sect was in a weakened state and wasn't even comparable to the current Longevity Sword sect, there weren't many in the entire Wei County that dared to provoke Lu Gongyuan. Although Feng Chongqing's Longevity Sword sect had become one of the 7 sects, his reputation was far inferior to Lu Gongyuan's. Most of the martial arts factions in Wei County still had some conflict with the Longevity Sword sect, a foreign martial arts faction. Right at this moment, at the foot of the Longevity Sword sect's mountain, Chu Xiao, Mu Zi, Han Lei, Song Xiao, and a group of assassins from the Blue Dragon Society were walking up the mountain path of the Longevity Sword sect in broad daylight. Assassins weren't assassins. As long as they could kill someone, they could use any method. Just like Bu Tiannan, he never used any assassination methods. Once he received a mission, he would simply kill his way over. If someone blocked his way, he would kill them all. Once he killed everyone, he would be an assassin. Although Chu Xiao didn't really approve of such behavior, in the face of absolute strength, he didn't need to use those little tricks. Looking at the surrounding scenery, Chu Xiao shook his head gently and said, "When I came to the Azure Water Sword sect in the past, I mentioned that the feng shui of this place isn't too good." Song Xiao looked around suspiciously and said doubtfully, "The scenery here isn't too bad. Verdant hills and limpid waters." Chu Xiao said indifferently, "That time, the Azure Water Sword sect was annihilated. Now, the Longevity Sword sect is going to be annihilated too. Is this feng shui considered good?" Song Xiao shrunk his neck. He wanted to say that it wasn't the Azure Water Sword sect's feng shui that wasn't good. It was official Chu's feng shui that wasn't good. Whoever provoked him would be unlucky. At this moment, there were many martial artists from the other Wei County's martial arts sects on the mountain path leading to the Longevity Sword sect. Although most of the martial arts factions in the Wei County didn't have a good impression of the Longevity Sword sect, there were still some who were willing to join the Longevity Sword sect. Therefore, they would occasionally come to the Longevity Sword sect to report on certain situations and to maintain a good relationship. When they saw a group of people wearing the Blue Dragon Society's signature masks and iron conical hats ascending the mountain, this group of people immediately panicked. Nothing good would come out of being associated with the Blue Dragon Society. It was a matter of life and death. The group immediately went up the mountain and reported this matter to Feng Chongqing. Chu Xiao and the others didn't intercept them. When Chu Xiao and the others set foot on the mountain gate of the Longevity Sword sect, Feng Chongqing and the other Longevity Sword sect people were already watching Chu Xiao and the others vigilantly. But Chu Xiao didn't look at them. He just looked at the scenery in front of him and sighed. Things are still the same, but people have changed. In the past, the Azure Water Sword sect could be said to be completely destroyed in the hands of Chu Xiao, especially Shen Bai. With the 10,000 swords returned to origin, if there was no Chu Xiao, Shen Bai would have stepped into the real pellet state now, which was enough to be on par with Zhongxian, Feng Qishao and the others. It was a pity that there were no ifs in this world. No matter how amazing you were, death was death. A dead genius was worthless. Lu Jiang, he disdainfully said in the blood soul bead. "Hypocrite! You were the one who destroyed them. Why are you still sighing here?" Chu Xiao ignored Lu Jiang he. Feng Chongqing looked at Chu Xiao and the others vigilantly, cupped his fist, and said in a deep voice, "I don't know why the Blue Dragon Society came to my Longevity Sword sect?" Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Sect Master Feng is pretending to be confused. What else can the Blue Dragon Society do? Of course it is to kill." Although the Longevity Sword sect had already guessed it, now that Chu Xiao said it in front of them, it still made their faces change suddenly. As the head of the Four Spirits, the largest assassin organization in the underworld, the terror of the Blue Dragon Society was needless to say. Although the Blue Dragon Society was not a demonic Dao, their reputation in the underworld was as bad as the demonic Dao martial artists. After all, Feng Chongqing was also someone who had fought his way up in the underworld. He had a lot of experience, and he knew the rules of the Blue Dragon Society very well. Therefore, he didn't seem to panic. Feng Chongqing just took a deep breath and said, "I am really curious. Just who could hire the Blue Dragon Society to kill me? A sect master and a martial arts grandmaster. Although I, Feng Chongqing, have made many enemies in the underworld, My enemies shouldn't be so generous. Everyone, I don't know who hired you to kill me, but I also know that the Blue Dragon Society can't reveal the name of the employer because of the rules. That said, the Azure Dragon Society only kills people for profit. I, Feng Chongqing, am willing to double the price of whatever the client offered. You guys go kill him. That way, the Azure Dragon Society will still be killing people, but you'll be earning triple the reward. Although the Blue Dragon Society also had missions to assassinate martial arts grandmasters, such missions were very rare. They were basically done by the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society. It wasn't a problem of strength, but most people couldn't afford the price. The price to assassinate a martial arts grandmaster was simply sky high, and ordinary people couldn't afford it. On the contrary, if they could afford it, they naturally had the strength to kill themselves, and they didn't need to spend a lot of money to hire people from the Blue Dragon Society. Thus, Feng Chongqing speculated that the person who wanted to kill him must have gone all out in order to come up with a reward that barely met the standard. Although his longevity sword sect had only just been established, it still had quite a bit of wealth. Spending money to avert disaster and get rid of an enemy hidden in the dark was a good thing. However, at this time, Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Sect Master Feng, you must be joking. As people in the underworld, we pay attention to trustworthiness. As a person, we should keep our word. Although the Azure Dragon Society is an assassin organization, we still have our principles. Since I've accepted your money, I'll have to take your life. In the future, when you become a ghost, don't come to me to collect the debt." Feng Chongqing's eyes revealed a trace of coldness. "Then today, must you all go to the extreme? I know the rules of the Blue Dragon Society. If you all die here today, the Blue Dragon Society won't find trouble with me, but with the employer. If you want to kill me with just a few people, I'm afraid you are underestimating the Longevity Sword sect." As soon as he finished speaking, Feng Chongqing directly waved his hand, and hundreds of Longevity Sword sect disciples immediately wielded their long swords and formed a sword formation, surrounding Chu Xiao. As the earth energy exploded, biting cold sword qi drifted, but it didn't attack Chu Xiao. Instead, it merged into Feng Chongqing's body. The reason why the Longevity Sword sect was able to become one of the new 7 sects and 8 schools wasn't just because of the support of the Hidden Sword Villa. All these years, Feng Chongqing had been conscientiously managing his faction, and the standard of the disciples was even stronger than the Azure Water Sword sect in the past. With the support of countless sword qi in the sword formation, Feng Chongqing sword qi soared into the sky. The long sword in his hand emitted a scorching aura, just like the explosion of a meteor from outer space. It was blinding and dazzling. This was the divine weapon that Chang Tingshan gifted to Feng Chongqing, ranked 36th in the sword spectrum, Wildfire. With a thrust of the sword, thousands of sword qi fused into his body. Feng Chongqing's sword was like an immortal in the heavenly palace, descending from the sky with sword qi soaring into the sky. "Immortal caresses my head, tie my hair and receive eternal life." Chu Xiao took a step forward, and his left hand passed through the endless sword qi and actually grabbed the divine weapon Wildfire. His right fist blasted out, and the fist force was like a tsunami, tearing everything in front of him apart. Black Tortoise True Technique. Mountain and Sea Fist Sutra. The sword qi shattered, the earth energy exploded, and Feng Chongqing's body exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Only the divine weapon Wildfire was still in Chu Xiao's hand. As the blood mist dissipated, the entire mountain gate fell silent. Chapter 860. In any place in the underworld, the real pellet state was considered an expert and a powerhouse. As a result, they watched a real pellet state master being punched into a cloud of blood mist. This scene was simply shocking. Glancing at the crowd around him, Chu Xiao said indifferently, "Blue Dragon Society is killing people. Unrelated people, please leave. If there is any accidental injury, you can come to the Blue Dragon Society to resolve it. Well, one last thing. I am Lin Shui of the Blue Dragon Society. In the future, if there is any hatred of killing one's father or stealing one's wife, you can come to the Blue Dragon Society to resolve it. Of course, the reward must be sufficient. The result will definitely satisfy everyone." As Chu Xiao's voice fell, the surrounding people suddenly dispersed in horror. They watched as Han Lei, Song Xiao, and the others began to massacre the Longevity Sword sect. After a quarter of an hour, the entire longevity sword sect was either dead or escaped. Chu Xiu leisurely left with his men. Everyone present secretly shook their heads as they looked at the mountain gate that was once again covered in fresh blood. A few years ago, they had witnessed the destruction of the Kanglin sword sect here, and now, they had witnessed the destruction of the longevity sword sect. The feng shui of this place seemed to be problematic. Otherwise, how could it be destroyed twice in just a few years? As soon as the incident of the longevity sword sect came out, the entire underworld was in an uproar. It wasn't that the underworld hadn't seen the annihilation of a sect before. Even sects that were stronger than the longevity sword sect were annihilated. However, this time, the longevity sword sect was destroyed too quickly. In less than half an hour, the longevity sword sect, one of the 7 new sects, was destroyed. It was simply unbelievable. At the same time, everyone also heard that Chang Tingshan of the Hidden Sword Villa was so angry that he smashed several teacups, wanting to avenge his sworn brother. Of course, this was mainly for outsiders to see. Even if Chang Tingshan wanted to find someone, he had no chance. Everyone knew that the Blue Dragon Society was just a sword in the hands of the employer, but who knew the real sword user? Moreover, Chang Tingshan didn't dare to cause trouble for the Blue Dragon Society. Lin Shui, who had appeared out of nowhere, had killed Fang Chongxing with a single punch. This kind of strength was simply terrifying. Chang Tingshan knew the ins and outs of Fang Chongxing. Because of this, he could roughly estimate how terrifying this fellow called Lin Shui was. Also, the Hidden Sword Mountain Villa really couldn't afford to offend the Blue Dragon Society. They couldn't afford to offend that lunatic, Lu Tiannan. He could only express his stance. It was impossible for him to go to the Blue Dragon Society for an explanation. However, no matter what, through this battle, Lin Shui's name had completely spread throughout the underworld. Everyone was wondering where such a ruthless person had come from in the Blue Dragon Society. Of course, compared to them, the Blue Dragon Society was even more confused. Although the Blue Dragon Society was large, it wasn't so large that it couldn't recognize its own people. They had never heard of the name Lin Shui. However, when they heard that the other party was from the Heavenly Assassins branch, they fell silent. The current atmosphere in the Blue Dragon Society was very subtle. Previously, the Great Dragon Head and the Second Dragon Head were cooperating well. One was in charge of internal affairs, while the other was in charge of external affairs. The foundation of the Blue Dragon Society seemed to be flourishing with each passing day. As a result, it was unknown when the two sides became hostile. In the beginning, it was just a quarrel. In the end, it even turned into a power struggle. Now, it had evolved into a direct confrontation. Even Duanmu Qianshan was imprisoned by Bu Tiannan, not allowing him to take a step out of the Blue Dragon Society. The Heavenly Assassins branch was Duanmu Qianshan's trusted subordinate. 2 of Duanmu Qianshan's trusted subordinates, as well as his adopted daughter, were now in the Heavenly Assassins branch. Who knew if this Lin Shui was secretly trained by Duanmu Qianshan? The Blue Dragon Society's triennial gathering was imminent. However, the leaders of the 36 Heavenly Dipper divisions had a feeling that a storm was brewing. Although these people were scattered all over the underworld, and a leader of a division already had a lot of power, in fact, what they really relied on was the Blue Dragon Society itself. With the existence of the Blue Dragon Society, they were only responsible for killing people and did not consider other aspects of the underworld. Without the halo of the Blue Dragon Society, they were afraid that they would have been annihilated countless times already. Therefore, for most of the leaders of the Blue Dragon Society and some of the assassins, they did not want the Blue Dragon Society to be in chaos. 3 months later, on the day of the Blue Dragon Society's gathering, the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society was very mysterious. At least, most people in the underworld did not know where the Blue Dragon Society was located. Even if they knew, they could not enter without permission. The origin of the Blue Dragon Society could be traced back to the top sect of the ancient times, the Four Symbols sect. In the ancient times, the Four Symbols sect was a top sect on the same level as the Three Pure Temple and High Heaven sect. However, for some reason, they did not escape the great calamity of the ancient times and were destroyed. At their peak, the Four Symbols sect had 4 main divisions. The Black Tortoise division was responsible for forging weapons, arranging formations, and refining all kinds of machinery. It was not good at fighting, but it was the most important division for logistics. the Vermilion Bird Division was made up of women. They were responsible for refining medicinal pills and raising some exotic plants. Even the qi they cultivated had healing effects. Of course, compared to the Black Tortoise Hall, the Vermilion Bird Hall had some combat power. When they studied exotic flowers and herbs, they would also study some poisons and even goo insects. When it came to a real fight, their combat power was also extraordinary. As for the White Tiger Division, it was violent and focused on killing. It was the main combat power of the Four Symbols sect. The Azure Dragon Division was the sharp knife of the Four Symbols sect. It had the least number of people and usually did not take action. However, it was like an azure dragon hiding in the deep sea. Once it broke out of the sea, it would be shocking. Therefore, the Azure Dragon Division was only responsible for dealing with difficult enemies. Once the Azure Dragon Division was mobilized, it was time to fight to the death. The Blue Dragon Society was born from the Azure Dragon Division of the Four Symbols sect. Like the White Tiger Division, it was the strongest division of the Four Symbols sect in the past. The place where the Blue Dragon Society was located was the main relic left behind by the former Four Symbols sect. After being remodeled, it became the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society. This place was located in the mountain range between the border of Eastern Qi and Western Chu. It was surrounded by bewildering formations. Those without the key would have to break the formation by force. Otherwise, they would eventually find their way out. Therefore, even though the Blue Dragon Society was so obvious, there were only a few people who could see the true face of the Blue Dragon Society. Among the four spirits, the Blue Dragon Society and the White Tiger Division were the most hostile to each other. They even hated each other to the point of fighting to the death as soon as they met. The reason was related to the current headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society. As the inheritors of the Four Symbols sect, the strongest were undoubtedly the Blue Dragon Society and the White Tiger Division. They naturally wanted the ruins of the Four Symbols sect to be their headquarters. That way, they would be the head of the four spirits and the most authentic inheritors. However, it was clear that the White Tiger Division failed in the end and was chased out by the Blue Dragon Society. The hatred was thus formed. Mu Zi led Chu Xiao and the others around the bewildering formation a few times. Only then did the real Blue Dragon Society appear in front of Chu Xiao. What came into view was a huge palace complex, but the shape was extremely strange. The palace complex in the south was like a vermilion bird spreading its wings. Half of its body had collapsed. The palace complex in the north was like a black tortoise lying on the ground. It was the largest and was relatively well preserved. The palace complex in the west was the most damaged. It was so damaged that it couldn't even be seen clearly. That should be where the White Tiger Division was located. Only the palace complex in the east was like an azure dragon emerging from the sea. The buildings were towering and over 300 meters tall. However, Chu Xiao could clearly see that the Azure Dragon Palace should have been repaired. Otherwise, it would have been impossible to maintain such a complete appearance under the great calamity of the ancient times. It was the Blue Dragon Society's triennial gathering. There were many warriors coming and going from the Blue Dragon Society. Most of them wore the same black iron masks and bamboo hats. Apart from the patterns on the masks, it was difficult to distinguish them. When these people saw Mu Zi, they would stop respectfully and greet her politely as Mississippi. This respect was not directed at Mu Zi. Mu Zi had only been in the Blue Dragon Society for a few years. Of course, she couldn't accumulate this kind of prestige. They were greeting Mu Zi as Miss, but the one they really respected was Duanmu Qianshan. Even though Duanmu Qianshan had fallen out with Bu Tiannan, most of the branch leaders of the Blue Dragon Society were not idiots. They knew who gave the Blue Dragon Society everything. However, after seeing Chu Xiao, everyone's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Recently, there was a rumor in the pugilistic world that a ruthless person appeared in the Blue Dragon Society. He killed a martial Dao grandmaster with one move and wiped out one of the 7 major sects in half an hour. It should be this person. However, this person seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. They definitely hadn't heard of this name in the Blue Dragon Society before. However, seeing that this person was from Duanmu Qianshan's Assassin's Branch, even if some people had doubts, they didn't ask much. Although the second dragon head had fallen out with the great dragon head, he had directly or indirectly managed the Blue Dragon Society for a lifetime. Who knew? At this moment, Duan Tianlang walked out of the Blue Dragon Society's headquarters. When he saw Mu Zi and the others, he walked over with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. he said lightly. So it's Miss Mu.
If I'm not wrong, the person beside you is Lin Shui, who has recently become famous in the pugilistic world. However, I'm very curious. The Assassin's Branch is also one of the 36 branches of the Blue Dragon Society.
Without the permission of the Great Dragon Head, who allowed him to take over the Assassin's Branch as the branch leader.
Mu Zi said coldly, these Great Dragon Heads have the right to manage, but who do you think you are? Who are you to interfere in my business? Duan Tianlang's eyes flashed with anger. He wanted to say something, but he suddenly felt Lin Shuiyi's gaze fall on him. He felt a chill run down his spine, and a shiver ran down his spine. Chapter 861. Duan Tianlang was a typical villain. He bullied the weak and flattered the strong. He was sinister, ruthless, and cold-hearted. But because of this, he was very sensitive to danger. He had heard of this Lin Shui before.
He was a guy who had suddenly appeared in the Assassin's Branch and had destroyed the Longevity Sword sect in an hour.
This battle record was impressive enough. He also suspected that Duanmu Qianshan had secretly nurtured him. But when Lin Shui looked at him, he felt a chill from his head to his bones.
Duan Tianlang didn't even dare to say a word.
He just turned around and left dejectedly. Mu Zi coldly snorted and said, this person is the main culprit for the Blue Dragon Society becoming like this. If he did not bewitch the Big Dragon Head, the Big Dragon Head would not have fallen out with adoptive father so quickly and even imprisoned him. He even wanted to bewitch the Big Dragon Head to kill adoptive father. Fortunately, adoptive father's prestige in the Blue Dragon Society is unparalleled. A group of people opposed it and finally gave up. Chu Xiu lightly said, the main culprit? He is not qualified. The main culprit is still Bu Tiannan. Duan Tianlang is only a branch leader, but Bu Tiannan promoted him to the position of one of the Big Dragon Heads. He even put him in an important position. Who else can he blame but him? As a leader he can ignore things, but if he does not know people well, then he really deserves to die. After saying this, Chu Xiu directly went to see Duanmu Qianshan with Mu Zi. After Duan Tianlang left, he went straight to Bu Tiannan's room. The Blue Dragon Society's triennial gathering was approaching. At this time, Bu Tiannan was playing with a delicate golden snake in his room. The golden snake did not look ordinary, but in Bu Tiannan's hand, it was like an earthworm. It shivered and did not even dare to spit out its poisonous fangs. Seeing Duan Tianlang come in, Bu Tiannan yawned and said, I say, what are you doing here? Isn't the gathering going to last for a few hours? Duan Tianlang didn't know whether he should be happy or worried about Bu Tiannan's reaction. Following such a boss was very insecure, but it was precisely because of Bu Tiannan's style that he gave him most of the power in the Blue Dragon Society. Duan Tianlang said in a deep voice, Great Dragon Head, it's Duanmu Qianshan's side that's acting strangely. Recently, a person called Lin Shui appeared in the Jianghu. He led the Assassin's Branch and destroyed the Longevity Sword sect in half an hour. However, we have never heard of this person before. Only the people from the Assassin's Branch seem to be familiar with him. This person must be a trusted aide that Duanmu Qianshan has secretly nurtured. Duanmu Qianshan actually secretly cultivated a real pellet state martial artist, but we didn't know about it. It's conceivable that this old guy has evil intentions. Great Dragon Head, in my opinion, we should seize this opportunity to kill Duanmu Qianshan in front of everyone. At that time, even if someone were to object, it would be useless since he's already dead. Bu Tiannan snorted when he heard the words and said, Duan Tianlang, you should take care of the things that you should care about. Don't meddle in the things that you shouldn't meddle in. After spitting out a word, Bu Tiannan's eyes slanted. Duan Tianlang suddenly felt an extreme killing intent wrapped around him. Even now, he couldn't figure out whether Bu Tiannan's killing intent really wanted to kill him, or if it was just an unconsciously released momentum. Duanmu Qianshan, that old guy, doesn't have many days left to live. If he was younger and still so ignorant, I would have killed him long ago. But now, is it glorious to kill such an old man? It makes people look down on him for no reason. I don't care if he's Lin Shui or Mu Zi. I've spared his life for the sake of his conscientious assistance in the past. If he still wants to cause trouble, then don't blame me for being merciless. As soon as he finished speaking,
The golden snake in Butiannon's hand was crushed into pieces with a loud bang. When you have absolute power, no amount of conspiracies will work. That old man had better behave himself and retire peacefully in the Azure Dragon Society. He'll be the second dragon head until he dies, Bai Xiaochun said. Duan Tianlang nodded in agreement and carefully retreated. However, he always had a bad feeling, as if something bad was about to happen. Especially that Lin Shui, this person gave him a dangerous feeling, but also a very familiar feeling. At this time, in another house in the Blue Dragon Society, Chu Xiu finally saw Duanmu Qianshan in person. Although Duanmu Qianshan was currently in a state of imprisonment, he could only leave the Blue Dragon Society. His own courtyard was still very well maintained. Chu Xiu even saw some Buddhist scriptures in Duanmu Qianshan's hands. They were not martial arts, but pure Buddhist scriptures. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Senior Duanmu likes Buddhist things? Could it be that you want to atone for your sins? Most of these Buddhist things are just deceiving oneself and others." Duanmu Qianshan smiled and said, "Deceiving yourself and others is the right thing to do. Born in the martial world, everyone is guilty, but no one can convict you of your crime. Unrestrained, lawless, undisciplined. People who can't see clearly will easily get lost in this slaughter." In I's opinion, the most useful thing about Buddhist scriptures is to let you know that there are things in this world that are worthy of your reverence, even if these things are just something you deceive yourself and others. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "From the looks of it, a person like me should belong to the most rebellious type. I cultivate a Buddhist cultivation technique, but I have no respect or fear for the gods and Buddhas." Duanmu Qianshan shook his head and said, "This is not rebellious. This proves that Official Chu has a strong heart. I have heard about the happenings in the world. Official Chu, we are going to make our move today. Are you sure you can kill Bu Tiannan? It's not that this old man doesn't believe you, but this matter is of great importance. If Bu Tiannan doesn't die, then the Blue Dragon Society will certainly fall into discord." At that time, the White Tiger Hall that has been hostile to the Blue Dragon Society for thousands of years, as well as the karma that our Blue Dragon Society has sown over the years, will surely come knocking on our door. Therefore, Official Chu, please don't blame me. I must get an accurate answer. The Blue Dragon Society's current foundation was inseparable from Duanmu Qianshan's schemes all these years. Although he was the second dragon head, he was more like the third dragon head than Bu Tiannan. He valued everything about the Blue Dragon Society more. Chu Xiu faintly said, "The top 10 on the wind and cloud list are not easy to kill. It would be strange if I said that I have 100% chance of killing Bu Tiannan. However, Senior Duanmu, you only need to remember one thing. I, Chu Xiu, am a very vengeful person. As long as I want to kill someone, even if I have to endure for 10 or 100 years, I will get my revenge one day. Since I am here today, Bu Tiannan is someone I must kill. Senior Duanmu doesn't need to say anything. I will do my best. However, the rest is Senior Duanmu's problem. There are still many people in the Blue Dragon Society who are loyal to Bu Tiannan. If they escape, there will be endless troubles in the future." Duanmu Qianshan sighed and said, "Official Chu, don't worry. It is better to get the pain over with than over. Those people definitely won't be able to cause any trouble." Once Bu Tiannan died, the Blue Dragon Society would inevitably fall into a purge. However, if he didn't do this, then when these people betrayed the Blue Dragon Society, it would be equivalent to a split, which would lead to countless troubles. Therefore, even if Duanmu Qianshan didn't want to kill each other, he still had to do it. 6 hours later, all the leaders of the 36 Big Dipper divisions had gathered. The Blue Dragon Society's triennial gathering had officially begun. The gathering place was in the main hall of the Blue Dragon Society. The surroundings were paved with green-gray stone bricks, and the walls were decorated with dim whale oil lamps. There were also some faint radiance of magic arrays, causing the entire hall to be bathed in dim light. In addition, most of the people in the Blue Dragon Society were wearing black clothes, black conical hats, and masks, making this place seem even more evil than a gathering of the demonic path. Not only were the leaders of the 36 Big Dipper divisions present, but there were also some gold medal assassins from the headquarters of the Blue Dragon Society, such as Han Lei and Song Xiao. In total, there were close to 100 people. The atmosphere in the hall was extremely heavy. Not a single person spoke. The assassins of the Blue Dragon Society didn't only have cold and silent people like Han Lei, but also talkative people like Song Xiao. However, at this time, not a single person in the hall made a sound. Obviously, these people also noticed that this gathering was different from the usual ones. A moment later, Bu Tiannan walked out with the other 6 dragon heads of the Blue Dragon Society. Duanmu Qianshan followed behind Bu Tiannan expressionlessly. No one knew what he was thinking. "Greetings, Big Dragon Head." Everyone present called out in unison. Bu Tiannan sat upright on the green dragon throne at the very top. He casually waved his hand and said, "It's like this every time. It's boring. If you have something to say, just say it." As usual, the branch leader who completes the least number of missions will be punished. Upon hearing this, everyone's expression changed. This wasn't an idea that Duanmu Qianshan came up with. Rather, it was something that Bu Tiannan had come up with several years ago. It was a so-called whip method. Every time there was a meeting, the branch leader who completed the least number of missions would be chosen to receive punishment. Moreover, the punishment was extremely cruel. They would have to endure the bites of several types of poisonous snakes from the Miao territory. They couldn't use their stellar energy to resist the bites, and they would only be given the antidote after an hour. With such a heavy threat present, the leaders of the Blue Dragon Society were indeed crazy to carry out the missions. However, in Duanmu Qianshan's eyes, this method was superfluous. It might even cause some negative effects. One had to know that the Blue Dragon Society itself was already the #1 assassin organization in the world. Business came to them of their own accord. They didn't lack missions at all. They only lacked people to complete the missions. Now that this rule was out, it was bound to cause the leaders of the various branches to be impatient for success. This would result in the loss of the assassins under them. They might even take on some less valuable missions to make up for the numbers and lower the standard of the Blue Dragon Society. At this time, Duanmu Qianshan stood up and said in a deep voice, "Big Dragon Head, I think that this is somewhat inappropriate. This rule should be abolished." You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.